Yo, YouTube, how you guys doing? Welcome into a video that I've been wanting to make for such a very long time, and that is a killer tier list video. This is something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. I've been talking about it, and now I'm finally here. We have every killer the whole way up to Trickster, and I'm going to be putting them in this tier list, and I'm going to be ranking them, and I'm ready to have everyone shut over my opinions, essentially. So before we get into this, I want to talk a little bit about like the criteria that I'm going to be judging on and kind of my general mentality towards this tier list, because I think tier lists in DBD are really strange, because like I think it's like matches in DBD are very different if you're saying like really high skilled players or saying like the average people that you run into even when queuing at rank 1, which are not really that good. So this tier list is going to be based off of very high level play, because in my opinion, a killer that can't kill very high skill players but does a really exceptionally good job at killing low tier players is not really a great killer, right? I'll give an example. Freddy is an example of a killer that absolutely destroys low tier survivors, right? Like even and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying low ranked, I'm saying low like skill. Rank 1 does not equal skill. Like I would say the vast majority of people that I play against at rank 1 are not really like, I'm not trying to be mean, but they're not like great survivors, right? They're not like super high skilled to the point where your pick as killer is really going to matter. They're the type of survivors where you can beat them with any killer just because it doesn't really matter. They're not that good, right? And against survivors like that, Freddy is like god tier. He would be like top of S tier if that's how we were basing it. But I'm basing this off of like, it does not matter what 4 survivors join your lobby. It can be like the 4 best survivors in the entire world join your lobby and they're training for the next big Dead by Daylight tournament. What killer do you have the best chance of winning with, right? That's how I'm gonna be basing this. And I think that's a pretty fair way to do it, because I think even though like Freddy would might have an easier job at killing lower tier survivors, the killers that can beat those really good survivors can also beat bad survivors too, right? Like I think the ones that can beat the ones that can beat the good survivors can also beat the bad ones. So I think we're gonna go based off that. We're also gonna be basing this off of completely mastering the killer, right? We're not going to be basing this off of like your average skilled player behind the killer. We're going to be basing this behind the person controlling the killer has mastered them and they can play them at the highest level possible. Okay. I also want to say that because I'm ranking this on basically only super high skill survivors, and I'm not really ranking it based on how an average actual match of Dead by Daylight usually goes, that this might not be the best tier list. Like if you're a new player that just clicked on this video and you're like, oh, I don't really know the strength of killers and I just kind of want to know like who's my best bet for getting to rank 1 or winning games at rank 1, right? Because new players are mostly concerned with getting to rank 1 and like performing okay at rank 1. This isn't really a tier list for that, okay? If you're looking for that, I could make another tier list if you want that goes more in depth about that kind of a subject. This is more of a tier list for you've mastered the killer and you're going against survivors who have mastered survivor, which does not really happen very often. It's not really like a common situation, but it's more of like a potential. This is more of like the potential strength of each killer as opposed to like the average game that you're running into, right? Plus, if you're trying to find out what killer is viable as far as rank 1 or like getting to rank 1, the answer is really everybody. Everybody is viable. It's just a matter of how good or bad you are at the game. Some are obviously going to be better than others. And if you guys want a separate tier list that talks about that, maybe how easy it is for killers to play, we can make that down the line as well. I'm also going to be judging this based on 3 different criterias. I'm going to be giving them a rating out of 10. Well, there's going to be 2 out of 10 and 1 out of 5 because I like to make things confusing. We're going to be talking about the killer's chase potential, which is, in my opinion, the most important part of a killer's kit and what makes a killer good, because at high level play, that's the hardest part of the game, is actually being able to catch survivors that are good at looping. Is by miles the most difficult part of playing against good survivors. So we're going to be judging their chase potential. We're going to be judging their mobility. This one's going to be out of 5 because I don't think we really need to go the whole way to 10. I think mobility is pretty simple. There's not really like most killers have around the same mobility, so we're only going to do a score out of 5 for that one. And then we're also going to do a third score, which is, I'm just going to call it utility, but this is going to be basically, it's not necessarily going to be utility. It's going to be like anything that isn't any kind of extra power they have, right? Like for stealth killers, we'll include their stealth. For killers that have game slowdown, we'll include their game slowdown. Basically, anything extra that the killer brings to the table that isn't covered in chase or mobility will be covered with this. So we'll judge that as well. And that's the criteria we're going to use. I'm going to start from the very beginning, from Trapper, and we're just going to go through every killer in order, and we'll talk about their strength, and I'll give them a rating. And then I'm gonna throw them in a tier that I think they go in, but I do want to give you a warning. I might switch stuff up at the end. At the very end of the video, I'm going to look at my tier list, and if I see anything that maybe looks a little wrong, if a killer is in front of another killer that I think doesn't belong, I might switch it up. But I'm going to try to just make it as best as I can as I go. The last thing I want to say before we jump into this is that we're also not basing this on like their best add-ons. I'm gonna base this off of essentially no add-ons, or like add-ons that barely affect their power. For instance, some killers have add-ons that like widely make them significantly better. Like Myers is a good example. He has a lot of add-ons that just make him like insanely better. Like Eerie Head Huntress is an example. We're gonna go based off of just average add-ons that maybe make your power slightly better, but not like, you know, we're not going to judge them based on their most crazy shit. So that's also a thing to keep in mind as well. So we're not really going to take add-ons into account too much. So with that in mind, let's begin with my boy Trapper. So my man Trapper, we're going to give him a 3 out of 10 in chase, because his chase is not very good, right? He's essentially just a 4.6 killer that chases people around, but then he also has the traps that he can set up. But the traps are really unreliable. Like, they're not, like, you take time and you set up traps and you put them in places where you think people are going to go, and you have to either A, hope that they don't get disarmed, or B, you got to hope that the survivors actually run to where you think they're going to run. If they take like weird pathing, which a lot of people do, then you end up wasting a bunch of time setting up traps for literally nothing at all. So it's very, very risky. It's very inconsistent, and without his traps actually getting any value, which again is inconsistent, he's kind of just a 4.6 killer that runs around, which is not really that good. That's kind of actually pretty bad in chase. So I'm gonna give him a 3 out of 10 in chase. Definitely not the greatest. For mobility, I'm gonna give him a 2 out of 5. Now this category, just to say right off the bat, a 4.6 killer with no power would be 3 out of 5. Just being 4.6, 3 out of 5. The reason why he gets 2 out of 5, even though he's 4.6, is that he has to kind of go out of his way to pick up traps. He has to go around the map and like get his power, or else he has no power. And if you're playing Trapper, like, you're more than likely doing that, right? Like, if you're not, then like, what the hell are you doing? Like, if you're not using your power, why are you even playing Trapper? So I think he actually gets a minus on mobility because of the fact that he has to go around and get his power and go out of his way to do it, which is kind of a pain in the ass. So he's going to get a 2 out of 5 on mobility. Not very great for the in the mobile department. And for utility, I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10, which honestly might even be generous. It might be more like a 3 out of 10. I'm only giving him a 4 out of 10 because I think his traps are pretty solid for like shutting down loops, right? Like, being able to trap up Shaq and then just be like, all right, I never have to worry about Shaq ever again, is a pretty powerful ability to have, right? I shouldn't say ever again, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a pretty powerful ability to have. On top of the fact that even if your traps are getting disarmed, the survivors are having to take time to disarm your traps. And sometimes survivors will waste a lot of their time going around and disarming all your traps, to the point where they're like missing out on a lot of generator time. So I will give him a 4 out of 10 just because there's a little bit of utility there, but overall he has really low scores and everything. Like 3 out of 10, 2 out of 5, 4 out of 10, not great. I really do think Trapper is probably one of the worst killers overall. It's really hard to judge him though, because I think if like, he's like probably one of the only killers in the game that's super luck based. If things happen to go your way, like if your master plan of every single trap you set up happens to like work and get value, he has potential to be like A tier. He has potential to be this good if you're lucky, but if you're unlucky, he has potential to be like D tier. And maybe even below D tier if you get really unlucky, right? So because of his inconsistencies, I just feel like there's no way I could rate him high. I feel like for you to be a high tier killer, you need to be consistently good, and he's just not. So we're gonna drop him in D tier. We're gonna go ahead and just drop him in D tier. I think that's where he belongs. All right, moving right along, we got Wraithy Boy, my man Wraithy Boy. This is one of my more favorite killers in the game, believe it or not. So for Wraith, as a score, as a chase, we're giving him 2 out of 10. Which is pretty bad. It's pretty bad because Wraith can't really do much in a chase, especially now that they changed him. They recently gave him a change, which I think is an overall buff. They buffed how quickly he moves in his cloak, which we'll get around to that. But then they nerfed They basically gave him built-in windstorm, so he moves faster while cloaked, but while he's uncloaking, he moves really slow, which makes it kind of hard to use her cloak mid-chase, but it also makes him more mobile. So his chase is really bad. You can't really use your cloak mid-chase very much at all. Like, there is some cheeky things you can do where you can cloak and run in front of somebody and then try to body block wherever they're going, which is okay. It is okay, but it's still really not great. But against any like good survivors, like actual competent survivors, will be able to loop Wraith basically forever. Like, it's going to be ridiculously hard to get anything done as Wraith against people that are remotely good at the game. So his chase is one of the worst in the game. It's 2 out of 10. It's pretty bad. His mobility, on the other hand, we're going to give him a 4 out of 5 on mobility. And, you know, it's honestly, I could even say this could be like 4.5 out of 5, but I'm not going to bother going there. I think it's a 4 out of 5 is pretty good. They bumped him up recently, so he goes like something like 6.0 while cloaked, which is fucking insane. Like, that's very, very, very fast. That is super fast. I could be wrong on that number, but I know he's going very, very fast while cloaked. And it does a lot for him. He can traverse the map insanely well while cloaked. Like, insanely well. And having that amount of mobility is really good when you combine it with his stealth, which is where we're going to go into his utility, which I gave him a 7 out of 10 because I think his stealth is very, very solid. That's basically almost all within his stealth. And speaking of stealth, we're going to go into his utility, which I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. And that is basically all because of his stealth, which I think is actually really, really solid. His stealth is pretty okay. Again, he moves really fast while stealthy. He can uncloak like behind walls, and the survivors won't know you're there until you at least like hit the bell once, which is like half your uncloak. So you can really get some good sneak hits. You can do like a lot of cool like hit and run builds with them because of it. But again, even like hit and run builds are not that effective against super good survivors. That's more of something you do against like, I don't know, kind of unorganized groups of, you know, not so great survivors. So even though that utility is there, I still don't think it makes him that strong at like high level play, but it is some value. So we did give him a 6 there. All in all though, his stats are pretty low. We're going to drop him in, ooh, C or D tier. Oh man, I'm going to drop him in high D tier, but we might move him up. We might move him up to C tier by the end of this video. Okay. But for now, he's going to go in D tier. His chase is just so bad, and chasing people is so important. Like, if you can never down a survivor, then you're never going to be able to stop them from doing gens, and he's just going to struggle so hard with that against anyone who's even remotely decent. So he's going to D tier for now. All right, so next up is Hillbilly. Oh, man. So speaking of favorite killers, this guy used to be my all-time favorite killer, but I don't know so much anymore. So this guy, let's talk about his stats. We're going to give him a 6 out of 10 in chase. I definitely think he has an above-average chase, although against really good survivors, it has good counterplay. He has a lot of different mind games he can do. There's a lot of cool things he can do with curving and faking pallet breaking and just like zoning. There's a lot of cool stuff that he can do, like with his chainsaw, and also his one-shot down is also nice as well. Although I think that maybe falls into the utility category a little more. But I'm gonna give him a 6 out of 10. He's definitely above average, but he's not like one of the best of the best in chase. You can definitely loop him for a decent amount of time if you're really, really good at the game. As far as his mobility, this guy's a 5 out of 5. I mean, this is like the definition of mobility. This guy flies across the map at double speed, and he can do it multiple times. I mean, they added overheat, which I almost would have been 4 to 5 because of overheat, but no, he's insane. He's so fast. Like, he's definitely significantly better than Wraith, and I gave Wraith 4 to 5. So he's a 5 out of 5 in mobility, which is really, really nice. That's super good. And that's probably one of his strongest suits, to be honest with you. As far as utility goes, though, I give him a 2 out of 10. He doesn't really have much. I'm gonna say that his zoning and his ability to break pallets quickly with his chainsaw while zoning could maybe count as chase, and maybe I should count it as chase, but I'm gonna throw it in the utility category and say that it's pretty useful there, but he doesn't really bring any other utility to the table. He doesn't really have much else going for him. He kind of just chainsaws around and then tries to catch you, right? There's really no gimmicks, no secret stuff. It's just pretty straightforward. So yeah, that's essentially him. He's just fast and pretty decent in chase. He's not quite good enough to be an S tier. He again, good survivors can still loop a good Billy. Like, as fun as he is and as good as he can be, he is an amazing killer for beating up on not so great survivors, right? Again, if this tier list was based on your average game that you get at rank 1, he would probably be S tier. But we're not basing it on that. We're basing it off like the potential of getting 4 god tier survivors. You get 4 god tier survivors against the Billy. Doesn't matter how good the Billy is, they're going to struggle. They still might have a chance to do well, but they're most likely going to struggle a lot more than others. Well, some others. So we're going to put him in A tier. I think he belongs in A tier, and I'm pretty confident with that. My boy can hang out in A tier. All right, moving right along to Nurse. Sweet. I mean, I'm gonna give you guys a quick spoiler. We're dropping. We're dropping her in S tier. Okay, Nurse's chase is 10 out of 10. She's the best chase killer in the game, which is why she immediately got dropped in S tier. Again, if you guys remember what I said earlier about playing this game at higher levels and dealing with high level survivors, the number one hardest part is being able to down them quickly, or even being able to down them at all sometimes. And Nurse is by miles the best killer at being able to down people quickly. She's so good. She can blink right on top of your face. It doesn't matter where you go. Like, you can use windows, pallets, every tool that you use to stop killers from downing you means nothing to a Nurse, because she can literally just teleport straight through them and teleport right to your face. Now, again, this is assuming that you're going against someone who's mastered Nurse. Nurse is probably the hardest killer in the game, so you don't see a lot of Nurses that are so good that you can't counterplay them, but they do exist. There are Nurses that are so good where they'll almost never miss a blink combo. Almost every single time they use 2 blinks and they're like within range of hitting you with those 2 blinks, they will hit you. And it's very rare to make them mess up a set of 2 blinks, and even if you do, they'll probably get you with the next 2, right? They do exist. It's pretty rare. Most Nurses are pretty jukeable, but if you run into one who is like really mastered her, you can't do anything. You can't do anything except for try to choose a good spot to die, essentially. Essentially, at that point, you have to accept fate and try to find a good place to die. So that's where she goes. Another reason why her chase is 10 out of 10, and you might see her compared to others later on that you might think are better. A big reason why she gets the full 10 out of 10 is because she's also not held back by any really significant cooldowns. Her blinks recharge after 3 seconds, and they actually start recharging during fatigue, which is usually around 3 seconds on average. So after she uses her 2 blinks, she goes into fatigue. 1 blink comes back during her fatigue, and once her fatigue's over, she just has to wait 3 more seconds, and then she's immediately able to use her power again. There's not really any major delays. You can constantly double blink, and if you're able to get hits on almost every set of double blinks, then you're just going to be getting constant hits, constant downs. The survivors will never be able to get gens done because they'll be always picking up their teammates or unhooking their teammates, and it's honestly wild. Like, watching good Nurse play is really a sight to behold, and she definitely belongs at the top of this tier list for sure. Spoiler alert, she's going to remain at the top. She's the best killer overall. That's where she's going. Her utility, I didn't even talk about her other stats yet. Her mobility is actually a 4 out of 10. I'm going to give her 4 out of 10, which is a little bit odd because she has the slowest move speed in the game. At like 3.85 is her move speed, which is slower than survivors. So you might be like, what the fuck are you talking about 4 to 5 mobility? But she, again, her power has like barely any cooldown at all. You can use both of her blinks and they come back in like 3 seconds. And her blinks also go through walls. So where like one killer that might think that a survivor is on the other side of a building might have to like run the whole way around a building, whereas Nurse can literally just teleport through the building. She just takes straight lines to wherever she wants to go. She doesn't have to take these weird paths where she zigzags in and around buildings and in and around objects. She just goes in straight lines wherever she wants to go. And it's actually pretty efficient and pretty fast. So her mobility is actually pretty good. It's definitely nothing to be scoffed at. It's very, very solid, especially if you run any kind of add-ons at all on her. It becomes even better. So 4 to 5 on mobility, which is also really impressive given the fact that her chase is so insanely good. Her utility is a 0 out of 10 though. She's also very straightforward. She doesn't do really much of anything. She kind of like, it's very straightforward. She blinks at you and she tries to kill you. And assuming, and if she's good, she will kill you, but she doesn't really do anything else. There's not really any like sneaky things. There's no like built-in game slowdown. There's no stealth. There's nothing really like that unless you run add-ons. So she gets a 0 out of 10 in mobility, in utility, but it literally doesn't matter because chase and mobility are probably more important, and she is killing it in both of those categories. So she's going in S tier. She will stay in S tier. She will remain at the top of this tier list up until the very end. Fair warning. All right, next up, we got the homie Huntress. Huntress is such a good, fun killer, man. Okay, so let's get into her stats. For her chase, I'm giving her a 7 out of 10, which is pretty good. If you remember, Billy had 6, so she's a little bit better than Billy in chase. And I don't think she's like anywhere near as good as Nurse, but she's definitely very, very solid. Like the way her chase works is essentially, if you're a super good Huntress, if you're either in an open field, you're fucked. If you're in a pallet loop, that's a low walled pallet loop. Think about like the center of Blood Lodge, the center of Gas Heaven, like the loops where essentially the walls are really small and the killer has very clear line of sight and basically objects that she can very easily throw over. And loops like that, she's insane. She's like oppressively strong. Like you can't do anything as a survivor. However, if you can make it to good areas of the map, also if you're on a certain kind of map, that's also a big thing. She's very map dependent. Depending on the map you get, and even on maps that are bad, there's certain areas of every map that are like decent against Huntress, right? If you can get to an area that's good, like, you know, a set of multiple jungle gyms, even like Shack can be pretty okay sometimes, like not the best, but it can be okay. There's definitely certain areas of the map where she struggles a lot and she can't really like reliably get hits no matter where they are like Nurse can. So I'm gonna give her a 7 out of 10. She's definitely very, very good in chase, but not quite like not quite god tier, just very, very solid. So she gets a 7 out of 10, which is still really good. However, where she suffers is her mobility. She is one of very few killers. She might be one of the only killers that I'm giving a 1 out of 5 in mobility because, my God, is it bad. She moves at 4.4, so she's slower than most killers, right? She has the slowed down movement speed, but not only that, she has to reload her power through lockers. So, for instance, if you use all your hatchets and you want to be not completely fucking useless, you need to go out of your way to go to a locker and refill your hatchets, which takes like 3 or 4 seconds, which gives the survivors time to run away, and then you have to chase after them and make up that distance, and you have to make up that distance as a slow 4.4 killer. So her mobility is really her major downside here, and really the main thing that holds her back because her power is extremely strong. Hatchets are so good. For utility, I'm going to give her a 4 out of 10. Just because it's kind of a weird one. Because she has range. Because her power is a range attack. And this might seem like, well, doesn't that, you know, fit into the chase category? And it kind of does. But I feel like the fact that you kind of have to worry about the threat of long-range hatchets all the time against good Huntresses is kind of like its own individual threat outside of chase, right? Like anytime a survivor gets hooked and you're across the map, you're like, oh God, is there going to be a hatchet coming from the moon over to this generator? Because, you know, they always run barbecue and chili, and then they, you know, most people that master Huntress know how to get those cross maps. So, you know, I do think there's a bit of utility there. It's not much, but it is something. So I'll give her a 4 there, just so she has something there. And even that might be a little bit generous. It might be more like a 2, but I'm just going to stick with a 4 just because whatever, you know, whatever. I think she belongs in A tier. I don't know if she's better. I think I'm going to put her above Billy. I do think she's going to go above Billy. If Billy didn't have his overheat, I think Billy might be above her. But the overheat really limits his mind games. I think Huntress barely beats out Billy right now just because of her better chase, I think. I'm going to put her there, but these two are really, really close. So this could interchange, and it might change later depending on how I'm feeling. All right, on to my boy Mikey. Mikey Myers. Mikey. Okay, so for Myers, let's show his stats. He is a 3 out of 10 in chase is what I gave him for chase, which is not great. I mean, that's not great. That's pretty much on the same level as Trapper. It's a little bit better than Wraith. This one might be a little bit of a hot take. I feel like a lot of people, I don't know. Myers is a weird one because I feel like a lot of people consider Myers to be like top tier, and then a lot of people consider him to be bottom tier, which is very strange. I definitely don't think his chase is that good. He basically just is he has a standard chase. He doesn't really do anything that special. I mean, yeah, he can get one-shot downs and like a very extended lunge, like a very slightly extended lunge, like almost nothing at all. Everyone always talks about his extended lunge. I'm pretty sure, like, I think someone told me, like, I remember hearing about it one time. Someone told me that the value of the lunge was 1, and then the extension was 1.1. Like, it turns it from 1 to 1.1. So it's like a 1/10 addition or something. I think I remember hearing that somewhere. I don't, you guys can fact check me. I'm not sure if that's right, but I think it's right. I know that it's not actually that much of an extension. It's not that big of a deal. The main benefit to his chase is his faster window vaulting. His faster window vaulting is actually pretty wild. And you could really catch people off guard if you like fake one way and try to get them to walk by the window as you vault it, and then you vault it at like mega speed and then one shot down them. That's why he's a 3 out of 10 and not like a 2 out of 10 like Wraith. But I think good survivors are going to know better, and they're not going to like try to play windows while you're tier 3. They're going to play really safe and throw pallets and play super safe until your tier 3 runs out, and then you're going to have to try to, you know, run around as a tier 2 killer that can't really one shot anymore. You know what I mean? Again, if we were considering add-ons in the mix here, it would be much higher, but considering we're not like really taking like his strongest add-ons into account, even with like medium add-ons, right? Even with like Hairbow and like Judas Journal or like J Myers Memorial, I still think it's a 3 out of 10. I don't think his chase is that good. So yeah, that's how it is. His mobility is actually going to be a 2 out of 5 because he starts out really slow. He starts out like really slow. He starts out like 4.2, but he also has like the stealth, right? But he starts out slow, and he also has to stalk people to gain power, which means he's not really chasing people. He's kind of just like going around stalking people for a while, which isn't really mobile. That's kind of the opposite of mobile. That's kind of like going out of your way to be immobile for the sake of powering up. And he continues to do it too throughout the match. If you want to like power up your power, you kind of have to lose mobility and stalk people to do it. So he gets a 2 out of 5 on mobility. It's not quite as bad as Huntress, but it's definitely not like the average for sure. And his utility, I'm actually going to give him a 6 out of 10, which is basically all for his stealth. He has a lower tear radius. He has no tear radius when he's in tier 1, but even when he's in tier 2, he has a significantly smaller tear radius than like every other killer, 16 meters, which is very, very tiny. And considering the fact that he can run a bunch of add-ons and again, simple add-ons, like Dead Rabbit's a yellow. He can run like a yellow add-on as well as like Monitor and Abuse to get like ridiculously small tear radiuses, which is really, really good for stealth. So we're going to give him a 6. Again, utility, we're going to go based off the value of what it is. I think that stealth is like a good 6 out of 10 for value. I think it's pretty solid value. But overall, again, the biggest, most important stat is the chase. It's still the chase, and his chase is low. So I think he belongs in D tier. I think he belongs in D tier. I'm gonna put him below Wraith. I think Wraith is actually slightly better than Myers because of his mobility. I think the mobility helps Wraith out a lot, and I think their chase is not that different. But this could be close. You could make an argument here for Myers being above Wraith. I'm not sure. Could change it later. I don't know. But for now, he's gonna go in D tier below Wraith. Okay, next up is Hagatha. Oh boy, my favorite killer in the world. Which is obvious sarcasm because I fucking hate this killer. But Hag is an interesting killer because I feel like most people these days are considering Hag to be like one of the best, if not the best killers in the game. And honestly, if we were like, if I was saying like, hey, if you've mastered each killer, who can you take into random rank 1 games and just absolutely slaughter every group of survivors you run against with like literally no effort at all, like literally 0 effort, just go in and just kind of like fuck around and click buttons and everyone just dies? That would be Hag. Hag is pretty insane because no one really knows how to play against her. I mean, she's pretty insane in general. She is a strong killer, but she's her insanity is like more shown because the way that you play against a good Hag is so much different than how you play against other good killers. So I'll talk more about this later, but for now, let's get into her stats. So for her chase, this one was kind of hard to determine because like how you determine Hag. How do you determine Hag's chase? Because she doesn't really chase people. She kind of sets traps. So I gave her a 3 out of 10. I basically, my idea here was like, if you tried to play chase, or why do I keep saying this backwards? If you try to play Hag like a chase killer, you could run around, and every time you make it to a loop, you can trap the loop, which forces them to leave, and then chase them to the next one, trap it, you can force them to leave. You could also fake setting traps, which could bait them into leaving, which you can then turn around and get a hit. So if you tried to play her like a chase killer, she would be like a 3 out of 10, but that's not really how this killer's played. So it's really not that big of a deal, and we'll get more into that when we get to the utility stat, okay? Mobility, I actually gave her a 3 out of 10. She's a slow killer, she's 4.4, and she also has to set traps similar to Trapper. So you might think like, oh, you think she'd be like a 2 or a 1 out of 10, right? But she teleports to her traps, and you'll see when you watch good Hag players that like, in the early game, she's kind of just setting up her traps, but once she gets to the mid game where like the action starts rolling, she's basically just teleporting all around the map. Honestly, I was tempted to give her a 4 out of 5 because towards like the late game, it's almost like she's everywhere at once, which is kind of insane mobility, to be honest with you. I think you could potentially give her a 4 here instead of a 3, and I don't think it would be that crazy. But I think the fact that she has a super slow early game makes me feel like I have to give her not quite like a 5. I'm gonna give her a 3 for mobility. And okay, so for utility, I gave her a 10 out of 10 because I feel like all this killer's power is in her utility. Like I don't really think she's not really a chase killer. She's a trap killer is what she is. She basically, to play Hag in a way that's you just set up a gigantic web of traps around like 3 or 4 generators, and then anytime someone goes anywhere near those, especially if you have a scroll wheel, you're just spamming your scroll wheel, anyone that steps in your trap, you instantly teleport, and then you get usually what is a free hit, and then you kind of rinse and repeat, and then eventually someone will go down, and then if you hook that person in your web of traps that you already had set up, then anybody that goes for that save then has to deal with all your traps that you have everywhere, and then you just kind of snowballs from there. You get multiple hits all over the place. You're just constantly teleporting around, getting multiple hits, and like also her ability to camp hooks is fucking exceptional. She's like one of the only killers in the game that can essentially like borderline face camp a hook from like 30 meters away, because you can't, it's so hard to deal with a hook that has like 3 or 4 traps around it. So she just has so much utility in her kit because of traps. It's absolutely wild. I'm gonna put her in again, I think most people would probably be like, oh, put her at S tier, put her at S tier. I'm sorry guys, she's really fucking good. She is really good. Hag is super good, but I think she belongs at the top of A tier. I don't think she quite belongs in S tier, and let me explain why, okay? I think a big reason why Hag does so well is because a lot of people don't understand her counterplay, which makes sense because her counterplay is really, really different from other killers. Like other killers have wildly, like for almost every other killer in this game, the counterplay is go sit on gens if you're not getting chased and just do that. If you get chased, try to stay alive for as long as you can while your teammates just sit on gens, and then bam, you win the game. Super simple strategy, right? Nothing really that crazy. Very, very basic strategy. That works against every single killer in this game except for Hag. She's the only one where that strategy doesn't work, and that throws people off, right? It kind of throws off what they know. So she's very like anti-meta, which makes her very, very hard to counterplay. Most people don't learn how to counterplay her until like very, very, very late into their I don't know if you want to say DBD career, but you know what I mean, into their playtime of DBD. They don't learn until super late. But she does have some pretty good counterplay. If you can get survivors who are very comfortable at messing with their traps, even if they're like running scroll wheel Hag, you could do a thing where you basically set off her trap at like the very edge of its trigger range while also like getting momentum away from the trap, and then she won't be able to hit you immediately after teleporting out, which can give you enough distance to maybe run to a window or pallet, and you can kind of just mess with her. You can kind of mess with a Hag. You can't just sit on gens and let her set up an entire web of 10 traps. You can't do that if you want to win against a Hag. You have to be messing with her. You have to be disrupting her. You have to be causing her havoc and actually interfering with her power. But if you have a team of survivors that knows how to do that and do that effectively, she really isn't that. I mean, she's still pretty powerful, but you can definitely deal with one. You can definitely deal with one and, you know, be able to get out and do really, really well against her. It's definitely not impossible. It's just very, very difficult because most people don't know. I will say, too, that Hag is a unique killer in the way that you kind of need all 4 survivors to know how to do it as well, which is, again, why she dominates so hard in like random rank 1 games, right? Like if you're just queuing up at rank 1, if even one survivor doesn't really understand Hag counterplay and they like just run around dying in traps, like all it takes is one survivor to get hooked in the middle of her web of 10 traps, and then all of a sudden it's like next to impossible to win unless everyone plays perfectly. But again, that one survivor probably doesn't know how to play perfectly, so like it really just takes one person and the whole team is fucked against Hag. But again, this is assuming that you're going against 4 survivors who all know exactly what they're doing against every killer. And in that hypothetical scenario, Hag belongs in the top of A. She's still really good, and honestly, even good survivors make mistakes. So, you know, if you ran 10 games of like the best Hag in the world against the 4 best survivors in the world, the Hag would definitely still be able to take some games for sure, because even good survivors mess up. I'm not going to say that she's like beat it, like you're going to crush her every time, but you're definitely not going to do as good as a nurse would do. So she's going to go in the A tier, and sorry, I had to give that one a long rant because I know people are probably going to get on my shit about this, but A tier is where she goes for me. Top of A tier. Okay. Trucking along, we got my man, the Doctor. So the Doctor is, let's just go straight to stats. His chase, I actually gave Doctor a 7 out of 10, which might seem kind of extreme, but I think he deserves it. I really do think he deserves it. So keep in mind, that's better than Billy, and it's on the same level as Huntress. But I really do think he deserves it. A really good Doctor that knows how to time his shocks, you literally cannot loop him. As a matter of fact, you can't even play most thrown pallets against him. Like, he will probably just kill you no matter where you are by denying your ability to do anything. You won't be able to vault. You won't be able to really do anything. Throw pallets, vault, do nothing. Like, you'll just die. But again, this is assuming that they really know the timings of Doctor and really know how to time his shocks perfectly. But if you go against a Doctor like that, he will just murder you. The main issue here, and the reason why, even though he can almost like kill you on command, the reason why it's 7 and not higher is because he takes a long time to do it. And that's, again, like kind of Doctor's biggest downfall as a killer in general, is he's able to, like, a good Doctor is able to kill pretty much any survivor. Doesn't matter how good or bad the survivor is, they're able to kill them. It's just the amount of time that it takes to kill them is sometimes a very long time. He's less effective against pallets that are pre-thrown, which good survivors will know. It depends on the pre-thrown pallet. Like, some pre-thrown pallets he's very strong on. It really just depends on which pallet it is. But certain pallets he's kind of weak against when they're pre-thrown, and every single pallet he's strong against when they're like before they're thrown. But even if you're like shocking someone and preventing them from throwing a pallet, it takes him so long to do it. He has to shock, and he slows down while shocking, right? He slows down significantly while he's doing his shock. And even though it denies them dropping the pallet, they usually get away with like maybe 1 or 2 extra loops just from how much you slow down to do the shock, which means it takes you like an extra 10 or 15 seconds to get your hit. And on top of that, he has to hit twice. So you have to do that twice. So your chases actually do get extended a bit. Even though you get a reliable hit, the reliable hit just takes such a long time that he's good. He's definitely above average, but he's definitely not like really good at chase. There's definitely room for improvement there. So I'm gonna give him a 7. You might even be able to bump that down to a 6, but I'm feeling generous for my boy Doctor, so I'm gonna give him a 7. His mobility is a 3. He's pretty standard mobility. This is pretty much as standard as it gets. He's a 4.6 killer. He slows down very slightly for like a very limited amount of time whenever he does a static blast, but like it's not that big of a deal. He's essentially just a 4.6 killer that runs around. Nothing really special there. He's right in the middle. 3 out of 5. His utility though, I'm gonna give a 6 out of 10. I'm gonna give a 6 out of 10 to his mobility, or sorry, his utility. Sorry, because he has a really good he has really good tracking. He has really good tracking, and he has really good like continued tracking. His static blast is amazing for getting initial chases, for finding people. Is really good for when they're in Madness 2 or 3. You can continue to track them through either illusionary doctors or just them screaming when they're in tier 3, which is really good for continued tracking. And he also has like very minor built-in game slowdown, because when they get to tier 3, they have to take like, I don't know, I think it's like 12 seconds, 10 or 12 seconds to snap out of it before they can do gens. So he has like some built-in game slowdown too, even though it's not a lot, it's some. So all those things together are, I would say, like a 6 out of 10 for value. It's not like game changing, like, you know, 10 out of 10, but it definitely helps a lot. It definitely helps a lot with his kit and helps him stay constantly on top of things. So yeah, we'll give him a good 6 out of 10 there. So with all that in mind, his stats make him seem like he's really good, and maybe I did make his chase too high. Like, really, if you just looked at his stats, he looks like a better Huntress almost, based on like the like chase, mobility, and utility. But really, he's more like B tier. And maybe I overestimated his chase. Maybe it should be more like a 6. But you know what? It's too late. I already did the list. I already edited the video. So sorry, it's going to be a 7. But maybe it should have been more like a 6. He's going to B tier. Okay, he's definitely a solid killer, and he has potential to do really well. It just takes a long time to do it, man. He just takes too long to do it. But he is very, very powerful, and he has very little counterplay when the Doctor player is actually really, really good. So B tier is where he goes, and that's where he's going to stay. All right, next we got the second of the Chainsaw Bros, which is Leatherface. My man, Bubba. So Bubba, for Chase, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. He is pretty good. I'm giving him the same score as Billy, actually, which wasn't on purpose, but ended up being what he was. His chase is really, really solid. He has his chainsaw that he can bust out, and while he's using his chainsaw, he goes really fast. He goes faster than his normal speed. He goes something like 5.0, maybe even faster while chainsawing, which is really powerful, and he still remains in full control. Although if you hit a wall, obviously you bump, but assuming you're good at not hitting walls, you go really fast while chainsawing. So playing pallet loops is really good with them because you can literally just rev your way up to the pallet, and if they don't throw it, you can literally just circle around the pallet loop with the survivor while going insanely fast. He also is able to play windows really well too for the same reason. If you're chainsawing towards a survivor as they're running up to a window, you can literally just use your chainsaw and then play the window like you normally would, right? If you like if you think that they're going to vault it, you can just go towards the other side of the window while chainsawing at 5.0. Or you can, if you think they're going to fake the window, you can, do the same thing you would as a regular chase killer. You would like pretend to fall for the fake and then chainsaw back towards them. And he just has a lot of potential with his chainsaw. He can use it for literally like 6 seconds straight or some shit. It's wild. It's actually wild how much potential he has. But he does have the unfortunate counterplay of basically the survivors just feeding them pallets. Like you could hypothetically just throw every pallet as you get up to it, and you could just kind of feed them pallets, and it'll make them take it. It'll make it so that it takes him a long time to down you, right? He'll eat like every single pallet on the map along the way, but it'll still, it'll still buy you time to get gens done, which is really all you need as a survivor. So because of that, I'm gonna give him a 6 out of 10. He's still really good in chase. One slip up against the Bubba means you're fucking dead, like literally whole dead, like not just injured, you're dead. So very, very big deal, and I'll give him a 6 out of 10 there. For mobility, he's the same thing as Doctor, straight down the middle, 3 out of 5. Nothing special there. He just runs around. There's really nothing that makes him more mobile or less mobile than anybody else. Just straight up standard, 3 out of 5. And for utility, I'm actually going to give this guy a 6 out of 10. Because, for 2 reasons, okay? His ability to break pallets is way better than most. Like, he breaks pallets extremely fast, and on top of that, you stay right on top of the survivor, right? Like, for instance, if you're chainsawing up to a pallet and then the survivor throws it to, like, stop you from chainsawing them, you break that pallet, you don't lose any additional charges on your chainsaw, and you can have up to 3, right? So sometimes you only use 1 charge, you break the pallet, and then the pallet break is like twice as fast as a normal break, and then you stay right on the survivor's ass. So the next pallet they get to, you're right on top of them, and you can basically do the same thing where you rev the saw, and then they're either forced to throw it, or they can try to risk it and not throw it, whereas where you might end up getting a chainsaw, So you sometimes get in these situations where the survivors are just throwing every single pallet because you're just like chainsawing it, staying right on their ass. They get to the next pallet and you're like right on top of them, so they have to throw it right away. You chainsaw it, you stay right on them, you get to the next pallet. You know what I mean? I hope this makes sense. Sometimes you just end up eating every pallet on the map in the matter of like a minute and a half, which again is a minute and a half though, and it is a long time. That's a long time for survivors to work on gens, but you can hypothetically clear an entire map of pallets relatively quickly, quicker than any other killer in the game. I think maybe Billy could be close, but he's insane at clearing out pallets. And the other reason why I give him such a high utility stat is because of his ability to get multi-hits. Multi-hits are huge, and being able to down multiple survivors from full health to dead, like instantly, is a very rare ability that not many killers can do. Yeah. I mean, he's really the only one that can do it reliably. There's others that can do similar things, but he's really the only one that can do it reliably. Like, especially like in the unhook scenario, like unhooking against a Bubba is a nightmare if he's anywhere even close to the hook. And so because of those 2 things, I give him some utility on his kit. I think he belongs in A tier. Is where he belongs overall. I don't know if he's above or below Billy. It's very hard. Billy has the mobility over Bubba, but Bubba has, I would say, a little bit more utility, I think. And it's really, really hard to say which one is better. Like, I think Bubba does a better job of shredding pallets and also dealing with like unhook scenarios and stuff. But Billy, I think Billy goes above him still. I think a really, really, really good Billy is still terrifying to go against. So I think I'm still going to put Billy above Bubba, but just barely. This is really close. They could be interchanged. Very, very strong killer. Super strong chase. But again, good survivors will be able to buy enough time to get gens done. And if they, again, but he also does punish mistakes really well. I feel like the A tier is like the tier of of killers where really good survivors should beat them most of the time. But if they make even a slight bit too many mistakes, these guys will take advantage and snowball the game and be able to win, right? That's essentially what this tier is, and I think that's where Bubba belongs. All right, moving along, we got the Fredster, man. The Fredster. See, this is where we're gonna get hot takey again. This is where people are probably gonna call me a fucking crazy person. So but I guess let's just do it. So for his chase for Freddy, I'm actually giving Freddy a 5 out of 10 in chase. His chase is good. He has like his snares or his pallets that he can set up that are pretty solid for killing people. But again, I think good survivors are going to be able to pretty reliably not get hit for long periods of time by either just playing really, really safe and like pre-throwing pallets, or I guess if you're using, I'm gonna just base this off snares. I think pallets is the weaker version of his power, so I'm gonna base this off of just snares. Pallets aren't that strong. If the killer is running pallets, good survivors can just be kind of aware of what pallets were used, and they'll be waking themselves up decently often and kind of keeping track of what pallets are real and which ones aren't. So I don't think pallets are really that good. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I'm going to be basing this off of snares. Even with snares, good survivors will be able to play safe and not really get hit most of the time. It might require them to not loot pallets and just pre-throw them a lot of the time, but still you can do that and get away with it. Although his chase is good enough that it does force people to do that, which makes him better than, you know, killers like Wraith and Myers and stuff. But it's definitely not good. It's not as good as Doctor. It's not as good as the Chainsaw Bros. It's not amazing. It's just decent. It's definitely like above average, but like decent. So I'm gonna give him a 5 out of 10, which I guess is technically average, right? So maybe I shouldn't say above average. For his mobility, he gets a 4 out of 10 though. He is pretty mobile. 4 out of 10. 4 to 5, I meant to say. 4 to 5. He gets a 4 to 5 for mobility. He's honestly pretty mobile. His gen teleport is wild. Like, he's already a 4.6 killer, which is nice. He doesn't slow down at all while using any of his powers. Like, he goes full speed while doing everything that he does. So that's really good too. His gen teleport is really, really good. I mean, it's really, really good. He just channels for a little bit and then it just pops right out of the gen. And it's also on a pretty low cooldown too. So his ability to get around the map is really, really good. So I'm gonna give him a 4 out of 10 there. As far as his utility, I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10 in his utility. He has like some things that are like okay, right? Like the fact that there's kind of a built-in game slowdown behind like survivors feeling like they need to wake up is kind of a thing, but like also not really, because you could just stay asleep, but it's not that big of a deal. The lack of a terror radius is useful in some instances. Like for instance, borrowed time just like doesn't work against Freddy pretty much ever. So like that's kind of a thing he has going for him. He has like some minor benefits like that to his power, but nothing really that crazy. I think most of his power just goes into his really good mobility and his pretty good chase. That being said, I think overall where this killer stands in the tier list is you guys are going to call me crazy for this. I know you guys are going to call me fucking crazy for this, but I think he goes in B tier. I do. I don't even think he goes above Doctor. I think Doctor is honestly better. I think if you're going against really good survivors, I feel like you're better off with Doctor than you would with Freddy. And I really do think that. You guys are probably going to call me crazy. You guys are probably going to go to the comment section right now and call me a total dumbass. And hey, if you want to do it, I guess go nuts. But that's my thoughts, man. I think that's where he goes. So let's move along quickly so that you guys don't have too much time to think about that and get mad at me and go right along to the pig. So we're going to drop her in D tier while we talk about things. So the pig's chase, I would say, is a 4 out of 10. It's not great, but it's still slightly better than the people that have basically nothing at all. Her dash is very underrated when it comes to chases. A lot of people don't know how to use Pig's dash, and I think she gets underappreciated a lot because people don't know how to use her. But if you go against a pig that really knows how to utilize her dash well, it's very, very hard to play against her at most pilot loops. She can fake you out by pretending to use her power and then uncrouching, or she could just use her power, fake one way and go another way. There's a lot of little mind games she can do that can get her potential hits at loops that other killers can't do. So it's not good enough to be like good. It's not like, which is why she's 4 out of 10. I mean, she's not as good as Freddy at catching people. She's nowhere near as good as Doctor, but she's definitely better than Wraith, Myers, Trapper, killers like that. She's definitely much, much better at them than catching people. So I'm going to give her a 4. Still bad, but slightly better than the people that are the worst, right? As far as mobility, we're going to give her a 3. I could have dropped this down to a 2, but I think you could just run around as a 4.6 killer and never crouch, which means that you're 4.6 all the time, which is pretty much right there along the standard lines of killer. So yeah, we're gonna give her a 3, but you could say like 2.5 for this because, and we're gonna move on to her utility because she has stealth. She has her crouching ability where she can crouch and go stealth, and she moves slower while stealth, like pretty slow. She goes slower than survivors while she's crouching. So that's almost why I want to make her lower mobility, but also you're not really like forced to do it. You can crouch when and whenever you want, so you can choose not to do it if you need mobility at the time. So it's really not like, I don't know. It's not like a thing that you're required to do. So I'm not going to bump down her mobility, but this does give her utility a big bump. She has stealth potential, which is really, really solid. I'm gonna give her a score. Her score and utility is 9 out of 10. Very, very good. Because of her stealth, first off, which is a pretty big benefit, right? Like, I feel like stealth in general already gives you maybe like a 4 or 5, just having any kind of a stealth power, regardless of how good or bad it is. But the big hard hitter here that makes her utility even better is her fucking reverse bear traps. They are nuts. Her reverse bear traps are easily, like by miles, the best built-in game slowdown in any killer's kit, right? As far as like something that causes the survivors to take longer to do gens, like that isn't a perk. That's just built into your base kit. Pig definitely has the best one with the reverse bear traps. Like the amount of time it takes for survivors, like we'll just say on average, we'll even lowball it and say on average, if every survivor gets their bear trap off on the second box, that still takes like 30 to 40 seconds to run to those boxes, fill the bar, do the skill checks, run to the second box, fill the bar, do the skill checks, and then run to whatever generator they want to do, right? That's like 40 seconds each, maybe. Which, if you think about it, gens are 80 seconds. So, like, if you really think about it mathematically, you're almost gaining like 2 extra gens worth of time if it goes out to around that average. So that's a very, very powerful part of her power. But unfortunately, because she has such a lackluster chase and not great mobility, even though it's almost like you have to do 7 gens instead of 5, doing 7 gens against a pig is really not that hard because her chase is not anything too exciting, and good survivors should be able to reliably loop her for a pretty long amount of time. So with that in mind, even with all that utility and stuff, I still think she belongs in probably C tier, to be honest. Maybe B. I think C. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, B is too high. Definitely C tier. I think she's gonna be the first killer that goes into C tier. She's not great. She's better than the killers that are on the bottom, I think. And I think she's really underrated. A lot of people might be surprised by how high I'm rating her as well. But I think she's definitely better, and she has more of a chance to do some advanced stuff than the killers that are down here. So we'll drop her in the C tier. I think that's where she belongs. So next up is Clown. Clown, let's talk about his stats. For his chase, we're going to give him a 5 out of 10. It's right around the same level as Freddy. He's actually, like, I would almost say he's a little bit better than Freddy in a way, but I don't want to give him a 6 because that's like the same level as Billy and Bubba, which is he's not as good as those guys. He definitely has a pretty good chase. His power is very similar to Freddy's in the way where he can like cut off a side of a pallet loop and slow you down while you're trying to loop around a pallet, which can get him hits, or maybe just scare you into throwing the pallet right away, which can be really strong. He also has the speed up gas, which is pretty good too, because it can help speed him up and make him faster around a loop. But again, smart survivors will know to play safe and just to like pre-throw pallets. And the thing about Clown too, even though I think clown bottles in general are better than, like, for instance, Freddy snares. If we're going to make a direct comparison to Freddy, even though they're better than Freddy snares, you get a very limited amount of uses of them, right? You get 4 uses by default. You could bump it up to like 6 or 7 if you run crazy add-ons. But you get like a limited amount of uses, and then you have to reload, which takes time. And yeah, they did buff him recently. They buffed him and gave him a faster reload, which has been really, really nice, and it feels really good on him. But still, the reload does take a while, and it kind of cuts down on your, like, you know, time efficiency, which is huge as killer. So even though his chase is like, if he had infinite bottles, he would probably be a 6 out of 10 for chase. He probably would. But because his bottles are so limited, they are a very powerful tool. And one thing I will say about his bottles is they are kind of better than Freddy in a lot of ways, because even in a wide open field, right? If you're chasing somebody down in like an open dead zone, you can bomb them with bottles and it slows them down, right? Like Freddy can't do that. You can't place a snare like 20 feet in front of you. Whereas with Clown, you can chuck a bottle, you know, like 20 feet in front of you and slow down whoever's up there with no movement speed penalty to do it, by the way, which is really, really good. So he does have some benefits over Freddy. I hear a lot of people, the reason why I'm making these comparisons, I hear a lot of people calling him a worse Freddy, which is not really a bad argument, but also I do think that he has a lot of things that a lot of people don't appreciate, and that's one of them. So for Chase, 5 out of 10. I'm gonna give him a 5 out of 10. He's definitely decent, not anything to call home about, but he's definitely, like, you know, better than the people that are bad at Chase. But it's still definitely possible to loop him for a long amount of time, assuming you know what you're doing. For mobility, I'm going to give him a 3 out of 10. And I was tempted to bump this up to a 4, because you guys are probably like, what do you mean, Tofu? They just added speed bottles that you can throw on the ground, and then you can speed up, Tofu. But the thing about the speed bottles is they take so long to activate, man. Like, they take 2.5 seconds to activate, which is like practically forever, man. Like, I can't tell you how many times I'm like running in a direction. I'll throw a bottle like 20 meters in front of me, because you literally have to throw it so far in front of you for it to activate in stride with your run, right? But to not have to like stop in place and wait for it to activate. You have to throw it really far in front of you. And then a generator will like explode to your right or something, right? And you're like, oh shit, do I run forward and get that speed boost, or do I go to my right towards that gen, right? So you either have to go out of your way to get your speed boost, or you just abandon the bottle altogether. Like that kind of stuff happens all the time. And even if that kind of stuff doesn't happen, you're still using part of your chase ability, right? Like, you're giving up part of your chase ability for the sake of mobility, right? If you use 2 or 3 bottles for extra speed while just running around the map, then when you finally find a survivor, all of a sudden you only have 1 or 2 bottles, right? And it makes it a lot harder to catch that survivor. So his mobility kind of takes away from his chase, and it's also just not that good to begin with. So I'm going to just say he's 3 out of 5 on mobility. He's pretty much the same as most 4.6 killers. It's not really anything that special. It's not good enough to bump him up to like a 4 out of 5. He's just going to stay at 3 out of 5. Now, for his utility, I'm actually going to give him a 2 out of 10. And this is solely just because I didn't give his yellow bottles any love in the mobility category. I feel like I need to give him some love here. I was going to give him a 0, but like, look, he can speed himself up. It's not very useful in a lot of situations, but it can be useful sometimes. So it's enough that I'll at least give him a 2 out of 10 in utility, just so he has something there, right? Like, it is useful in some scenarios. And it's not like it's an awful part of his power, and I want to acknowledge it in some kind of a way. So this is me acknowledging it, okay? 2 out of 10 in utility. So overall, where he belongs in the tier list, I would say either C or D tier. Oh, this is hard. Either top of D or bottom of C. I think I'm actually gonna put him in bottom of D. He just like the lack of utility. It feels like all he really has is like a slightly above average chase, and that's it. No mobility, no utility, just slightly above average chase. That's all, which is just not that great. It's just not the best. So he's gonna go in the top of D tier. It is subject to change. I mean, we'll see. Okay, so next up is every Survivor player's favorite killer, the Spirit. So let's just talk about her stats. So for Chase, I gave Spirit a 9 out of 10. And this is only because I wanted Nurse to stand alone at 10 out of 10. You can make an argument that Spirit's 10 out of 10 too, but the reason why I made her 9 instead of 10 is because, and I talked about this a little bit whenever I was covering Nurse, because even though Spirit can pretty much also get a guaranteed hit no matter where you are on a map, similar to Nurse, she does it in a way that's a little bit slower. She suffers from a little bit of a higher cooldown, which means she takes longer to do it, which makes it, and again, this is kind of similar to even Doctor in a way. I gave Doctor a 7 out of 10 because I think he's the same way. Doctor can probably get a hit no matter where you are if he's really dedicated enough to shocking you enough times, but it takes him a super long time. It takes him way longer than Spirit, which is why he's at a 7. In Spirit, it takes a decent bit longer than Nurse, so that's why she's a 9 out of 10, which is still amazing, right? Considering this is the hardest like category to get a high score in. You probably won't see a lot of killers with high scores in this category. 9 out of 10 is absolutely insane in this category. So yeah, and just to explain, I guess just for the sake of explaining, a good Spirit is basically able to hit you no matter where you are, because she uses her power, she phases, she goes invisible. Nothing you really do as a survivor could really, like, you can do things that help you. You can try being unpredictable, you can try like walking, but most Spirits are going to run Strider, and they'll be able to pinpoint where you are through sound, and they'll appear on your face and down you and hit you, and there's not really going to be much that you're going to be able to do about it. And it really is just, I mean, honestly, going against good Spirits is honestly just awful. It's a miserable experience. She's able to get hits pretty consistently, which is really, really good. Her mobility is also going to be scored a 2 out of 5, which is, again, a big reason why Nurse is slightly better. Because first off, she's 4.4, so she's like a slower killer. She's not a standard speed killer. And her only way of going faster than 4.4 is to use her power, but this is kind of similar to Clown, whereas if you use her power to get around the map, then when you find a survivor, you don't really have your power right away. You got to wait for it to come back. And then, you know, that kind of wastes time that you could be spending getting hits and, you know, so on and so forth. So even though she kind of has mobility with her power, it's not really like effective to use it. And you're better off saving your power for when you actually can get a hit with it. So her mobility is kind of on the low side. I'm going to give her a 2 out of 5 for that. As far as her utility, she doesn't really have much. I'm going to give her a 1 out of 10 for utility. And this is only simply because she has a smaller tear radius. She has a 24-meter tear radius, which, like, I guess, like, kind of technically makes her like a pseudo stealth killer. It's not really pseudo stealth, but she can start chases a little bit closer to survivors than other killers do. So that's really the only reason why she has a 1 out of 10 there. Otherwise, it would be a 0 out of 10. So with all this in mind, she's got pretty low scores in every category other than chase, but if you've been paying attention to what I've been saying, that's really the most important part of the game, is the chase. If you can end chases really quick and effectively, then you just kind of win the game. So she's an S tier. She's S tier, baby. She's right behind Nurse. She is pretty goddamn insane. I mean, you can deal with the lack of mobility and the lack of utility if you're able to just down everyone that you see in a relatively fast way, and she's able to do it fast enough that you're able to snowball. You can snowball very easily with Spirit. You down one person, you down another person nearby, and then all of a sudden everybody has to get off gens because they have to come save people, because you can't really just let 2 people die, right? That's half the team. So if you get like 2 people down or on hooks, then all of a sudden everybody is off gens because they're all having to come try to save people, and then there's no generators being worked on, and you get to just skip the Urlu and teleport around and hit people and down people all you want, and they can't really stop you. They can't really do anything because you're just constantly getting hits and constantly getting downs. And yeah, that's really all you need. Like, the good chase is really all you need, honestly. It kind of overrides all the other stats and makes her easily S tier. So S tier she goes. All right, so up next we got Legion. So Legion is such an unfortunate set of killers here. We'll go through all the stats and everything. So for Chase, I would say this is probably, I give him a 2 out of 10 for Chase, which is not great. Obviously, that's only on the same level as Wraith, which is the lowest of the low, right? I don't think any killer has gone lower than that other than Wraith in Legion. So yeah, 2 out of 10 on Chase. Very, very bad. There's literally nothing special about. The only like kind of redeemable thing that made me think about giving them a 3 is the fact that they get a free hit. Like, their power basically gives them 1 hit for free, but you can't down them with your power. You have to follow it up with a regular basic attack, and the basic attack there's nothing for you to do. You're just a regular killer. You're a regular killer with no power. You just have to run them down and try to get them. And a good survivor is not going to get downed by a killer that has an actual good power, and especially one that's playing safe and being careful and playing cautiously. It's just not going to happen. There's really nothing to help you get it. So 2 out of 10 on Chase, very, very bad. For mobility, we're going to give them a 3 out of 10 as well. This is kind of similar. Sorry, I keep saying 3 out of 10. 3 out of 5 as well. And this is the same thing as most of the other killers. Again, just a 4.6 killer. They do have a power that speeds them up, but you can't really use their power for mobility because then you won't have your power ready whenever you see somebody. So you kind of have to save their power and just run around normally. So they're just a 3 out of 5. There's really nothing special there. They're just really standard flatline with all the other standard killers as far as mobility. As far as utility, though, Legion actually does have a little bit of redemption when it comes to utility. I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10. And this is because they actually do have a bit of strength here with, first off, their ability to hit multiple people very, very quickly in their power. When you do hit multiple people quickly, first off, you get tracking. You get killer instinct on other survivors nearby in your terror radius, which gives you information and tracking, which is very, very useful. And then also the people that you hit while you're in your frenzy also go into deep wounds, which kind of gives you a little bit of game slowdown, right? Kind of similar to like doctors. It's not much, but it's something. It's some kind of game slowdown, right? It's some kind of addition, which is better than nothing at all. So really, honestly, like the utility is there. It's a good like 6 out of 10, I would say. Not amazing utility, but definitely significant. Definitely significant. But overall, like that in mind, like you guys see, this is basically the opposite of like killers like Spirit, or Nurse, who have really high chase but really low utility. Utility really isn't like what's paying the bills here as a killer, or I guess killing the survivors, or whatever the saying you want to say is. So I think Legion belongs in D tier as well. I think I'm gonna put him below Clown. I'm gonna put him below Wraith. I think maybe like above Myers. It's such an unfortunate killer because I do think that that one free hit you get is really, really nice. And again, I would say in like public matches against survivors who maybe aren't very good, this killer could be really, really solid, right? Like having everyone be injured for free means that you could basically go around and like one-shot people, which could be strong when people aren't good at looping. But if you go against people that are good at looping, on top of that, he doesn't really have any stealth or anything either. So even when they're injured, they don't really have to be worried about stealth. They can just sit on gens, and if a terror radius comes around, they can run somewhere safe. They really don't have to worry that much. As long as they're good at looping, you're not going to be able to down them very efficiently at all. So he's going to be towards the bottom. And again, if this was based on random matches, he might be higher up. But with the criteria that I'm ranking on, he's like middle of D tier. So he's definitely among the worst. Also, I realize I'm saying he when I probably should be saying they. I'm saying he because I always play as Joey whenever I play Legion. But, I'm sorry for all the Susie mains out there or anyone else that plays any of the other ones. But I'm sorry. I use he. I should probably use they. But hey, my bad. I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep using he. Joey is really the real Legion. Let's be honest. Let's be honest with each other. Come on. Okay, so we're gonna go straight to Plague. Let's talk about her. She, as far as stats goes, we're going to give Plague a 5 out of 10 for Chase, which is kind of odd. I think this is basically implying that you're going to have your puke decently often. I think her puke, like her corrupt puke, is, in my opinion, a little bit overrated. I think it is good. Don't get me wrong. It is good power, but it takes so, like, my issue with Plague is that it takes so goddamn long for the puke to travel. Like if you're chasing a survivor and they're about to turn a corner and you're trying to hit them with puke, sometimes you start puking and they have like an entire second or a second and a half to actually round the corner and not get hit by it. It's so frustrating. And I know it's something that you can get used to, but I just think that Plague is kind of similar to Huntress in the way where if you're at like a small walled loop, she's kind of insane, like insanely good. But if you're at like a high walled loop, like a jungle gym, like Shack, like even like T-walls, like any kind of like a higher loop, a higher walled loop, especially one that has a pallet, she's not really that good. And on top of that, that like long range threat is only a thing when she has her powered up ability. When she doesn't have her powered up ability, she's just an M1 killer. She's just an M1 killer that pukes on you and then gets you injured from puking on you. That's really it. She has to chase you down and M1 you unless she has her power. So even during her like power spike of having her corrupt puke, she's still just okay, in my opinion. She's not like amazing, she's just okay. And even that power spike is only happening sometimes. It's not like her constant power, right? Like I would compare her a lot to Huntress, but Huntress has her hatchets all the time, right? Like she has to reload, but it's not like she's going long periods of the game without her power, kind of like Plague is, you know what I mean? So 5 out of 10 for Chase, which is pretty unfortunate. A lot of people might give me shit for this, but I think Plague might be a bit overrated in that department. As far as mobility, I give her a 2 out of 5 because a lot like some of these other killers, she does have 4.6 as far as her power, but she has to go out of her way to get her fountains. So kind of like Trapper in that regard, where even though she's a 4.6 killer, she kind of has to, you know, like dip out from chases and like, you know, go out of her way to grab her power and then get back into a chase, which kind of leads to like less than stellar mobility because she kind of has to go around a bit. And it's really like, if I can give her a 2.5 out of 5, I might, because it's not that bad, but it's definitely enough to warrant her not having a 3 out of 5. As far as utility, she actually does have a decent bit of utility. I'm going to give her a good 5 out of 10 for utility. She pukes on people, which gets them broken, which means they can't heal, which is, you know, pretty solid, obviously. Like having people be broken is good. She actually has like a little form of built-in tracking that I don't really see enough people use this, but when somebody cleanses, it makes a sound. So like when someone like cleanses and gets rid of their sickness and uses a fountain to do it, it makes a sound. And as long as you remember what fountains were available, you can look and see which fountain just became available. And then you could basically know that that's where the survivor is. So she kind of gives you like tracking and information like that way, which is honestly kind of underappreciated and I think is actually really good. On top of the fact that when people are sick, they're very loud. They're like puking and they're super loud, which also, you know, kind of gives her tracking. As well as the fact that like she has some other like little neat things she can do, like she can puke on objects, right? Like you can like kick a generator and then puke on it, and then any survivor that isn't sick is gonna like not want to touch the gen because they don't want to get sick. Or if they do touch the gen, you'll be able to tell because someone will randomly get sick who wasn't sick. You know what I mean? Like there's some neat little interactions like that you can do. It's all not like none of it is like really game changing. It's not like holy shit, this makes her an amazing killer, but all of it combined is definitely a significant benefit, enough to at least warrant like a 5 out of 10 on the rating. So it's definitely a nice little touch to have on her kit. With all that in mind though, her chase is not great, her mobility isn't great, her utility is just okay. I think I'm gonna put Plague in, oh man, like the actual tier to put her in. This one is really hard, and I will straight up admit that this is probably my least informed opinion of this whole video. Plague is a killer that I don't have a lot of experience playing as, because I don't think she's very fun, and I don't have a lot of experience going against really good plagues. Like most plagues I go against are really easy to play against, like they're really easy to loop, but I feel like you really don't see the potential of a killer until you see somebody who plays her at a really high level play them, you know? So I'll admit that this is a kind of not well-informed opinion, but I'm going to put her at the end of B tier. I think she's better than the C tier killers, but I don't think she's good enough to be any higher than low B tier at the very most, to me. And that could change in the future if I, maybe get introduced to a god tier Blight that changes, or a god tier Plague that changes my mind. Sorry, Plague and Blight they're both sick, okay? They both have to do with, like, stuff like diseases and stuff. All right, cut me some slack. Plague. Until I see a high tier Plague, I think I'm just going to leave her around B tier, and I think that's where she belongs. All right, moving right along, we got Ghostface, my man Ghostface. Okay, so let's look at the stats. Ghostface for Chase, I'm going to give him a 3 out of 10. He's not really that great. He basically, like, obviously you can one-shot down people with his power, but, like, to get the one-shot down, you still have to, like, get a hit, right? I give him a little bit of an edge over Wraith and Legion because believe it or not, his ability to crouch actually does help him a lot in certain loops. There's certain loops where making yourself crouched mid like loop can sometimes hide your body and help you mind game what you're doing, right? Where like normally if you just tried to moonwalk, they'd be able to see every move that you make and it wouldn't work. But you can kind of hide your body a bit in certain like medium wall loops, and kind of I've gotten a lot of hits by crouching mid chase that I wouldn't be able to get with a killer like Legion or Wraith, for instance. So there is a little bit there. It's really not that good. It's not good enough to warrant anything higher than a 3 out of 10, but it's something. It is something to his kit that I think he has, but his chase is still overall pretty bad. It's a big issue that you run into with Ghostface against good survivors is you can stalk them and get them to the point where you can one-shot down them, but while they're exposed, they're going to play really safe. They're just going to run the pallets. They're going to take very little risks, and you're probably going to struggle really, really hard to actually get the hit. And then eventually the exposure is going to run out, and then you're going to be like, well, shit, now what? Now I'm just a regular killer that does what like normal, you know, half damage. So really not that good. Most of the time, it's honestly better to just hit. Like if you're playing against actual good survivors, it's usually better to just get the sneaky hit with your stealth and then try to follow up with like another sneaky hit later. I think honestly, against good players as Ghostface, you might be better off trying to rely on your stealth as opposed to relying on your chase. So his chase is kind of bad, and that's not really like the overall strength of his kit, I don't think. I also just want to throw in there real quick that I think a lot of people are going to make the argument that he can pop his stealth mid-chase to hide his red stain and basically become stealth mid-chase, and then that might help him in chase and should bump his score up. But I don't actually think that that helps him at all. I think that's kind of the lazy man's way of mind gaming with Ghostface. I think everything you can do by popping stealth, you can literally just do on your own by moonwalking and hiding your red light. So I don't really count that as a benefit, and I won't really be putting that towards the score. For mobility, we're giving him a 3 out of 10. His mobility is the same as every other killer. Again, he's 4.6. He doesn't slow down really at all unless you crouch, but you're not really required to crouch almost ever. So like, he's pretty just standard as far as mobility goes. But for utility, this is where he really shines, and I'm gonna give him. I'm actually gonna give him. I'm gonna give him a 7 out of 10, because I'm trying to think about effectiveness of this. Okay, he's probably the best stealth killer in the game, in my opinion. So I'm gonna give him like, I think his stealth score is definitely higher than like Wraith, for instance. I know Pig got a higher utility, but that was mostly because of her bear traps. Like if I was basing Pig's utility off only her stealth, it would probably would have been a 5. His stealth is really, really good. It's really strong. You can pop it at any time. You can just click M2 and you just become stealth. You lose your terror radius, you lose your red light and everything. And on top of that, he also runs at his normal speed. He's like the only killer in the game, I think, that can, like, without any crazy add-ons or perks or anything, just by default, go 4.6 while being stealth. Like, that is wild. That is very fast while also being stealthy. And it's a really, really strong power to have. So you can use that to sneak up on people that are doing generators, or just sneak up on people that are out of position at all. And you can sneak up and get a hit on them while they're out of position before they have time to react and get somewhere safe, which is really, really strong. It's a very, very powerful ability to have. However, against really good survivor players, once they realize that you're a stealth killer, they're probably not going to play super dangerously. They're probably not going to put themselves in positions where you're able to catch them off, like especially if they're injured. If they're injured, they're probably going to find a teammate to heal them, and they'll heal somewhere where there's lots of vision, and they're not going to get caught off guard, which almost every map has spots like that. There is some potential to catch them off before they can get to a safe area, so he's not like completely useless, right? But it's not as good. It's not as good as it might seem in like public matches. This is none of those killers where like in public matches, people like random public matches that you go against, people miss position a lot, and it's really easy to catch people out. But if you were to go against like really, really, really good survivors who knew what they were doing, it would be way harder, and it wouldn't happen very often. So with all that in mind, we're going to put him in a place in a tier list. I think, to me, in my personal opinion, Ghostface is the perfect middle ground killer. When people ask me like who is the most average killer in terms of like, you know, the ability to kill survivors, I think it's Ghostface. I think he's like perfect when it comes to balance, and I think he's very like right down the middle. He's strong. He has a lot of like things that make him like powerful, but he also has pretty clear cut counterplay, right? I think it's a pretty fair shot from both sides to perform well. I think he's got power, but it's not really too crazy. So I want to put him right at the middle of the B tier, I think. Above Plague, but maybe below Freddy and Doctor. I think that's where he's going to go for now. Could change, but I think that's where he's going to go for now. Right smack in the middle. I think that's where he belongs. All right, next up, we got the Demogorgon. This is a killer that I think is massively underrated. I feel like this is one of many killers on this list where I feel like I'm going to rate this guy, then people are going to be like, what the fuck are you thinking, Tofu? But I'm just going to explain my case and hope for the best, okay? So let's show the stats. For Chase, I'm actually giving Demogorgon a 6 out of 10, which might be surprising to you, considering I gave Freddy a 5. I gave Doctor a 7, but I think he gets a 6 out of 10 as far as the chase goes. He's definitely got a very, very, very good chase. He basically, especially when you run Rat Liver, which is just a common add-on that almost everybody runs every chance you can get because it's common and it's so easy to get them. Even without Rat Liver, he can do this, but with Rat Liver, it's even better. You can basically hold out your shred, like you could hold your shred attack out, and it like zones people. You can basically like threaten people by holding out your shred and like charging your dash attack, and it basically makes people it puts people into the scenario, right? Like if you're coming up to a window or a pallet, you could just start charging your shred, and then then they have to make a choice of like, okay, do they commit to the window or a pallet? If they do, you can just use your dash and hit them. If they don't commit to it, if they fake away from it, you can cancel your shred and then just hit him with a basic attack, right? There's a lot of situations where you get in against demos where he can just completely zone you out of whatever you're doing, and you're in a situation where no matter what, he gets a hit, right? And it happens a decent bit. And on top of that, one of the only counterplays to this is just to like try to hurry up and get to the pallet and throw it as fast as you can. And if you do that, then he just breaks the pallet with his dash and then keeps right on you, right? Kind of similar to Bubba. Kind of similar to Bubba in a way, but Bubba just does it a little bit faster. Like his pallet breaks faster, whereas Demo kind of actually has a stun after he breaks the pallet and gets held in place for like a little bit longer than Bubba does. But it's kind of similar. He has really, really, really good zoning potential, and he can even do it in an open field, which is something that a lot of other killers can't do. Right? If someone's like running away from you in an open field, you could hold out your shred, and it'll scare them. It'll make them start juking instead of going in a straight line, which will let you catch up and then get the hit. So there's a lot of good potential there with Chase. And I feel like you might not realize Demo's potential in a chase until you play against a good demo. Kind of like I said earlier about Plague, how I'm open to changing my mind about Plague. Because I didn't really realize how good Demo was until I started playing against good ones. And I was like, damn, he's actually very, very powerful. His chase is very, very good. So yeah, his chase gets a 6 out of 10. It's honestly pretty solid. Moving along to his mobility, he gets a 4 out of 5 for mobility. His mobility is pretty good. This is like teetering on 4.5 out of 5 because he's one of the only killers that can get from like one side of the map to the other side of the map in like 5 seconds. You know, there's very few killers that can do that. Although the reason why it's a 4 is because he kind of has to have previously been there before. You know, like for instance, Freddy is another one that can kind of do it, but Freddy's requirement is that there needs to be a gen there. Whereas with him, his requirement is that he had to have been there before and have set a portal, right? But if you are setting portals all around the map, he really does cover the map insanely fast. His portals have potential to give him so much mobility on the fact that he's already just a 4.6 killer by default. So he's already just decently fast as is, right? Like he's got normal mobility on top of his portals. So a good 4 out of 5, definitely solid. As far as utility, I'm only going to give him a 4 here out of 10. I don't think his utility is great. He has like some tracking on his portals where while a portal was active, if a killer's or if a survivor is like really close to it, he can get killer instinct while he holds his shred, which is like a very like niche tracking tool that really isn't that strong, but it does come in handy every once in a while. And he also has a very, very, very minor stealth where after he comes out of a portal, he's undetectable for a short amount of time. It's something like 2 seconds, which is really not that big of a deal. Like it can sometimes, like if you hide your portals really well, you can get some value out of it sometimes, but it's not like super common. But it is common enough. Like it does happen enough for me to mention it and to like, you know, at least bump up some points on the utility board here. So we will give him a 4 out of 10 there. So honestly, all of his stats are pretty solid. Like they're definitely not bad, really, in the grand scheme of things. As far as where we're actually going to rate this guy, I'm going to put him, and again, this might be a little bit controversial. I know a lot of people put Demo low on their tier list. I'm going to put him at the top of B tier. I think he's really solid. I think his chase is almost as good as Doctor's, but he has a lot more mobility, and he has potential to do things a lot faster than Doctor. And I think he's pretty solid. I don't think he's quite good enough to be A tier. But I do think he belongs at the top of B tier, I believe. So that's where he's going, above Doctor, above Freddy. Which again, like, this is putting Demo above Freddy I might be signing myself up for some crazy comments under this video, but I mean, I'm sorry, I gotta commit. That's my real opinion. That's what I think. Okay, up next is Oni. So Oni, as far as stats go, was hard for me to score, because I feel like Oni is so, like, he has like his power when he's in his power and then out of his power, and it's like it's two completely different things. And I think a big part of playing against Oni is denying his power. So like, let me try to explain. I'm gonna give Oni two different scores. He's like he's one of two killers that I'm gonna give two different scores to. I'm gonna give Oni without a power 2 out of 10, where he is just a 4.6 killer. He just walks around and tries to hit you. There's really nothing special. There's no stealth. There's nothing that can get him hits that other killers can't. He just walks around and tries to get hits, right? Without his power, he's probably one of the worst chasers in the game. Like, I mean, he is one of the worst chasers in the game. He has nothing special about him. However, when his power is active, I would say he's 10 out of 10. I would say it's insane. He's super fast. He breaks pallets like super quickly. He can go really, really quickly. He has no collision, so he can collide with. He can basically rub up against the walls and dash at them. A good Oni will basically kill you. Like, he will kill you during his power. It's a matter of just buying as much time as you can before you die. And if you're a good survivor, you can maybe buy yourself an extra 15, 20, 25 seconds, depending on how good you are and how in good of a position you are, which is enough to, like, you know, possibly win your team the game, right? Because really, against an Oni, you're just trying to do the best you can during his power. Like, you're trying to not all die, essentially. If only 1 or 2 of you die, it's not the end of the world. Preferably only 1 of you would die if you want to, you know, do well. But what I'm trying to say is that he's really strong during his power, but when he's not in his power, he's really weak. So I don't really know how to take this. I guess you can just do the average if you want to know his chase, but I don't know. He's a 2 out of 10 sometimes. Other times he's a 10 out of 10. As far as mobility goes, he's also just going to be a 3. There's really nothing special about him at all. Again, like, during his power, he's kind of fast, but you really shouldn't be using his power just for mobility. You should be using his power to kill people, right? Like, the only bit of mobility you should use during his power is, like, if you kill one person and then there's somebody else maybe kind of close, you can catch up to them quickly. But generally speaking, his mobility isn't anything too crazy. On top of that, he also slows down to suck up orbs, which I guess would give him a little bit of a negative to go with this little bit of a positive. So I think it evens out to about a 3. His utility, I'll give him like a 2 out of 10 here. It's not nothing, but he does have, like survivors do drop orbs, which could potentially give you, like, tracking information, although it's not like the most reliable. It's not the best tracking information. It's, like, not really, like, superbly good, but it's at least worth giving him a couple points in utility for. So yeah, as far as where to actually judge this killer in a tier list, it's so hard to decide, because the thing about Oni is that the survivors are really good, and especially if they know it's a really good Oni, right? Like, say if hypothetically it was like a tournament, right? If there was like a Dead by Daylight tournament, and you told the survivors, like, hey man, you guys got to survive this Oni, and if you do, we'll give you $5,000 or something, you know? Like, something crazy like that, right? Like, the survivors would play super safe, and they would try to avoid giving him his first initial hit at all costs. Because if you don't ever give him even a single hit, like, if you just play mega safe and make sure to never leave, like, if you get a tear radius at all, you run to the closest safe pallet and, like, play it super safe and carefully and cautiously, and, you know, don't take any risks whatsoever. Really, he would never really get the ball rolling. Like, it would be so hard to get your initial hit to get the ball rolling that it would be so hard to even do anything. But if you can get the ball rolling, like, if you can get a hit or two and get some blood and get your power once or twice, you can get a down on somebody because his power is so strong that you can almost guarantee the down. And then with that down, you can maybe combo and get more downs, which would make multiple people in the game injured, which would then lead to them leaving blood orbs everywhere, which would lead to you getting your power again, which would lead to you getting more downs, and then it kind of snowballs. And then, you know, that's kind of the idea behind Oni, right? That's the idea behind his strength. Once you get your power and you start downing people, you kind of perpetually stay in your power just because you're constantly getting downs. I'm assuming you're good at Oni. You're constantly getting downs, which is constantly leaving people injured, which is constantly getting you your power more. It's just getting that initial start against really good survivors, especially if they're really trying, is hard. So this is one of those ones where, again, if we were basing this off of like random matches at rank 1, he would be super high up. He would probably be S++ tier if we were talking about random public games. Because honestly, even really good survivors in like random rank 1 games, they like to take risks, right? Like most good survivors, when they're just queuing up for a game, aren't playing like they're playing for fucking thousands of dollars, right? Like even if they're like me, when I'm playing Survivor and I'm going against an Oni, it's not like I'm like, oh boy, it's an Oni, let's take 0 risks. Like I don't give a fuck. I'll go for a dangerous loop just because it's fun. Like who cares? Oh, the Oni's gonna get his power and kill us. No big deal. It's a game of Dead by Daylight, right? But this list is based off the hypothetical situation of 4 survivors that are really good, who are going against you and sweating their ass off. And if that was the case against Oni, he would struggle really hard. So as weird as it is to put him low, I'm gonna put Oni at the bottom of the A tier. I think that's where I'm gonna put him. Again, he has a lot of potential. I think if he can get an initial hit, I think this tier is basically just like a, if you slip up at all, you're dead tier. Because if you slip up and give an Oni a hit, especially early on, even just one hit, he can follow that person around and suck up all of his blood and then slowly get his power. And then once he gets his power, that fucking snowball starts rolling, right? That snowball starts going and he's killing everyone. And then all of a sudden you're in a horrible position. So I think he belongs in A tier against like really, really godly survivors. Again, if this was talking about like random survivors you get at rank 1, like, you know, your average match of not so great survivors, he would definitely be up here. But for these circumstances, bottom of A tier is where he's going. That's where he's going, and that's where he's staying. Okay, so next up, we got Deathslinger, dude. The man who slings the D, Deathslinger. So for Deathslinger, let's talk about the stats for his chase. We're giving Deathslinger a solid 9 out of 10. Slinger is, in my opinion, easily one of the best killers in the game in a chase. He's absolutely bonkers. Like, if you're going against a good Deathslinger, you are fucked, my friend. You are not going to be able to loop him at all. He is going to kill you, and there is nothing you can do about it. His zoning is absolutely insane. The fact that he's able to, at any time while running after you, he's able to pull up his gun and shoot in like less than a second. He's able to do that in like half a second. Like pull up his gun and shoot. He's able to like basically quickscope in like half a second. And the projectile of his gun is like the speed of a fully wound Huntress hatchet. Like it's so fast. Means that at any time while he's chasing you, you're in danger of getting shot at any second. Like there's really no there's no time where you ever can be comfortable and being like, yeah, he's not going to shoot me. Like it can happen so fast that you can't even react to it. So basically, while a slinger is chasing you, he's essentially zoning you at all times, even if he's not aiming his gun. Like he doesn't even have to aim his gun to zone you. Just his existence zones you. It's nuts. So you get in these situations against Slinger where you either try to avoid getting shot by zigzagging, and if you do that, then you're not really, you know, running away efficiently because you're not running in a straight line. You're going side to side to side, which means he's just going to catch up to you and hit you, right? Like he just won't shoot you and he'll just catch up and hit you normally. Where if you don't zigzag and you try to go in like a relatively straight line, he'll just shoot you. He'll just quickscope you with his gun and then hit you that way. It's like a lose-lose no matter what you do. On top of that, there's very few tiles that are safe against him. Most pallets that are in the game, even if you pre-throw them, he can still loop around them and find like his gun, like his harpoon that he shoots has such a tiny hitbox that he can fit it through so many crazy objects around the map. Like if you guys have seen some people that like main Deathslinger, you can get some wild hits, dude. Like the tiniest holes that exist in buildings, like little cracks in rocks and hay and stuff. You can shoot people in like the toes from like the bottom of hay bales on Colden Farm. Like there's so many little areas that you can shoot people in to get free hits and loops. It's insane. Like he can hit you almost anywhere on the map. There's very few pallets that are truly safe against Deathslinger. It is absolutely bonkers. Like I know I'm like really hyping this up a lot, but I think it's worth hyping up. He's absolutely nuts in a chase. The reason why he's 9 out of 10 and not 10 out of 10 is, again, it's right up there with the spirit reason. He just does it a little bit slower than Nurse, which is why Nurse gets the 10 and he gets the 9. Because for Slinger, even though he has that much power and he's able to hit you basically anytime he wants, for him to do it, he, you know, usually has to shoot you, reel you in, which takes like 3 or 4 seconds, hit you, you know, do the weapon wipe, reload his gun, which takes another second or 2, you know, shoot you again, reel you in, hit you. Like, it all takes a long time. It's kind of a slow process. It's a much slower process than Nurse, who just kind of blinks after you and then gets a hit, and then blinks after you again and gets a hit, right? Like, it's definitely slower than that. And it's probably even slower than Spirits as well. It's honestly kind of a pain how slow it is. It really like affects his time efficiency, but it's still, and on top of that, he's also very punishing. It's very easy to miss a shot with Slinger, right? Even the very best slingers in the game aren't gonna have 100% accuracy. There's no way. His hitbox, like the hitbox of the dart being small, is good for the sake of shooting through objects, but it's bad for the sake of like how reliably it is to hit. Like, Huntress hatchets, for instance, are huge. So getting hits with a Huntress hatchet is relatively easy, because even if it misses a little bit, it'll still hit just because the hitbox is so big. But with Slinger, you have to actually be like dead on accurate, which can be really hard sometimes. And if you miss even a single shot, it's really punishing, because you slow down while you're firing, and then you got to reload so that you have that extra shot as like a way to threaten the survivors, which gives the survivors a lot of time. So the fact that he's so punishing, and also it takes so long to get the hits, means that I'm going to give him a 9 instead of a 10. And I know this is a long rant just to explain his chase, but I think it's worth talking about. As far as mobility, he gets a 2 out of 10. He's a 4.4 killer. He slows down slightly while reloading and stuff. So like, it's not like crazy slow. Like, it's not as bad as who did I give a 1 out of 5 on? Huntress. It's not as bad as Huntress, who has to like go out of her way to go to lockers to reload. But you know, he definitely is on the slower end. So 2 out of 10, or sorry, 2 out of 5 for mobility. And as far as utility, I'll give him a 4 out of 10 for utility, because he has like the smaller tear radius that like Spirit has, right? He has a 24-meter tear radius. And on top of that, his low tear radius is actually especially good on Slinger, because his tear radius can be dropped down to what is it, 16 meters with Monitor and Abuse, and the range of his gun is actually 18 meters. So you can actually lower your tear radius to smaller than the range of your gun. You can shoot somebody before they even hear that you're near them, which is actually really strong. So I think that gives him a little bit of bonus points as far as like his low tear radius goes. And also he has like some very, very minor built-in game slowdown with deep wounds. When he shoots somebody and then hits them, or if they break loose, they go into deep wounds, which gives them a little bit of slowdown, but it's not really significant. So I'm gonna give him a 4 out of 10 in utility. It's nothing crazy, but it's, you know, it's pretty good. It's pretty solid. He's honestly kind of like a stealth killer while also having a gun, which is, you know, pretty wild. So as far as where I actually put him on the tier list, if you haven't caught on to the like general way that things are working here, when a killer has this good of a chase, they're gonna be S tier, because that is the hardest part about playing this game at a high level, is having that good of a chase. So being that good in chase, automatically he just belongs in S tier. He's definitely that good. And this might also be a bit controversial. I know a lot of people might not believe he's this strong, but I'm sorry, he is. A good slinger is absolutely fucking devastating to go against. Like, there is not much you can do. You basically just have to split up and slam out gens and hope that he doesn't find multiple people in a close-knit area. Otherwise, you're all dead. So that's where he's going. He's going to the S tier. He might not necessarily be in the middle or the top of S tier, but he's definitely going to be in the S tier. All right, moving along, we got Pyramid Head, dude, the Executioner. So for Pyramid Head, we're going to give him scores, and Pyramid Head is also going to get a 9 out of 10 for chase. His chase is very, 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 very good. It's similar to Slinger in a lot of ways, and it's kind of funny that these guys came out back to back, because I find a lot of similarities between them. He basically can zone you out of everything, right? How I talked about Slinger being able to zone you by just existing because of his ability to shoot you at any time. With Pyramid Head, he's able to zone you extremely well, because he goes 4.6 by default, and when he sticks his sword in the ground to get ready for his shockwave attack, he goes 4.4, which is still really fast. That's like the speed of Deathslinger, right? Like, he still goes really quick even with his sword in the ground. So basically, as Pyramid Head, while you're chasing somebody, if they're about to make it to a pallet or a window, you can just stick your sword in the ground, and as long as you're within range to hit your shockwave attack, it basically puts them in this scenario of like, fucked if I do, fucked if I don't, right? They either use the pallet or window, and then while they're in the animation of using it, you throw out your shockwave and get a free hit because they're stuck in an animation, or they don't use the pallet or window, in which case you could just let go of M2, pick your sword up out of the ground, and then get a hit for free. So essentially, if you're good at Pyramid Head, and as long as you don't fall for fakes, because really the only way to counterplay it is to fake it, but if you're a good Pyramid Head that doesn't fall for fakes, you essentially just get free hits when you get close enough to a survivor. Like if you're close enough to land a shockwave, you essentially are just guaranteed to get a hit as long as you don't mess it up, right? Which is really, really good. Like that is very, very insane. Like that is wildly good. So his chase is absolutely nutty. Definitely a 9 out of 10. Again, same thing for the reason why it's a 9. It's a little bit slower than others. Like when you do hit somebody, they get a big ass speed boost, and then you have to follow them, and you don't really have anything like mobility wise to help you catch up to them, like the Nurse or Spirit does. Like if you hit somebody with Nurse or Spirit, you can then follow up with your power, which is like, you know, mobility. Whereas like Pyramid Head doesn't really have any like mobile way to follow up with his first hit. He just kind of has to run them down again, which takes a long time, and it makes it doesn't take like a super long time, but it takes again longer than Nurse and Spirit. So it's a 9 out of 10. It's still really, really ridiculously strong, but just not quite Nurse level, but absolutely insane. Pyramid Head is by miles one of the best anti-loop, just best chase, just absolutely dominates chases. Like when you're in a chase with Pyramid Head, man, the chase, and especially if you're a good Pyramid Head, the chase is completely under your control, and the survivor is just desperately trying to not fucking die, essentially. And it's absolutely brutal. As far as mobility goes, he's going to get a 3 out of 5 because he's 4.6. So he's very similar to Slinger in the way that he has really good chase, but Pyramid Head is just slightly more mobile. He has 4.6 move speed, whereas Slinger has 4.4. So that's probably the big difference between them. As far as utility goes, we're gonna give him a 3 out of 10. It's not amazing. He has like some power to him. He has like the trails that you set on the ground can give you free tracking. If somebody runs over them, you see their killer instinct, which is kind of free tracking, but it's not really that reliable. And survivors can easily avoid it by crouch walking through it if they're not in the middle of a chase. So it's not really that reliable. He also has his torment power is also decent in the way where if someone's tormented, you can cage them instead of hooking them, which saves you time. But that's also a very situational power. Like you don't always want to cage people. Sometimes you just want to hook them, right? So even if they're tormented, sometimes you just want to hook them. You don't even want to cage them. And also, though, cages do help you get around hook-related perks like borrowed time, like decisive strike. Although decisive strike just got nerfed, so it's not that much of a problem anymore anyway. So like again, these are some okay benefits, but they're not like game breaking. They're not like the major standout part of his power. So I'm just gonna give him a 3 out of 10. They're not crazy. They're just like a nice little benefit to have on top of his insanely powerful chase. So as far as where to actually rank this guy, again, if you're keeping up with how I'm ranking people, you probably already know he's going in the S tier, baby. Not only is he going in the S tier, he's going above Slinger. He's going to the number 3 slot for now. He's not as good as Nurse or Spirit. Again, I think these guys are able to get their downs just a little bit quicker and a little bit more reliably. But I think he's above Slinger. I think his power is close to as strong, if not stronger. And also the fact that he's 4.6 just means that he generally navigates the map a lot better. And having that little bit of extra fluff of being able to avoid hook perks and stuff is also a really nice benefit to have. And I think it's just enough to inch him over Pyramid Head a little bit. Or sorry, inch him over Slinger a little bit. Not by much, but I think it's enough to inch him a little bit over Slinger. I think he fits at number 3 for now. All right, next up, we got the Blight. The Blight, baby. This is probably my favorite killer since the most recent patch. They changed his vision to come from his eyeballs instead of his kneecaps, and my God, is this guy fucking fun to play now. Like, holy, I'm having such a good time playing this guy. So let's get into his actual stats. For Chase, I'm going to give Blight an 8 out of 10. He is very, very, very strong in a chase. He's not quite on the same level as Pyramid Head or Slinger or Spirit or Nurse, where it like doesn't matter where you are on the map. Like no matter where you are, he's gonna hit you. There's certain areas of the map that are safe against Blight, where you can basically like force him into having to kick a pallet. But the thing about Blight is that even when you kick a pallet, like even if you chase a survivor and they get to a safe area where they force you to kick a pallet, kicking the pallet is not that big of a deal because you can make the distance back up almost immediately with your power, right? So his chase is nuts. And on top of that, there's very few places that are even like that. His ability to flick out of his power makes it so that most areas of the map, he's able to do some like fucky mind games by like bouncing back and forth, faking one way and then dashing the other way and then curving around the corner with his dash. This might be a kind of a controversial opinion about how good Blight is, but my God, if you guys have not seen an actual good Blight play the game, it's something that you need to experience. To really understand how good Blight is, you need to play against a really good Blight. I used to think that Blight was just okay. I didn't think he was amazing. I thought he was just okay. But I've gone against some good Blights. I've been practicing a lot of Blight myself. And this guy, I'm telling you, this guy is absolutely nuts in a chase. His chase potential is so good. It's pretty wild. His mobility also is 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 mobility. He's the only one that matches Hillbilly in this region that gets a 5 out of 5. Because he, first off, has the same move speed as Billy while they're dashing. They both go at 9.2. And he can dash like pretty much the whole way across the map, like on command. And he can also change direction probably better than Billy. So his mobility is absolutely insane. Like this motherfucker flies around the map. It is absolutely wild how mobile he is. And he can do it also just like on command, right? You don't have to charge a chainsaw. You just hit M2 and you start going, which makes his mobility actually more useful in a chase than Billy's is, right? Like Billy's mobility is really good for getting around the map, and then in a chase it's really only good if you're going for curves, but curves are kind of hard to get. With Blight, his mobility directly affects his chase, which makes him better at chasing, which means that it's kind of like an even bigger bonus to have a 5 out of 5 in this category for him. As far as utility goes, he gets a literal 0. I don't think there's really any utility that he has in his kit. It's very, very straightforward. He fucking runs at you and he tries to hit you. That's it. There's really no utility to happen here. There's nothing really else going on. There's no secret stealth abilities. There's really nothing like that going on. It's just very straightforward. He just runs at you and tries to kill you. But he's very, very effective at doing it. So as far as where we're actually going to rank him, I feel nervous making this tier list because I'm just thinking of all the comments people are going to make. But he's number 3, dude. This killer is number 3 on a tier list for me. I think he's the 3rd best killer in the game, which I know kind of spoils the fact that the last 2 killers aren't going to be in the top 3. But I'm sorry. I think he's the number 3 killer in the game. I think the only killers that I can say are better than him are Spirit and Nurse. And honestly, I would debate putting him above Spirit on certain maps. The only reason why I'm going to put Spirit above Blight is because Spirit is not really map dependent, whereas Blight really suffers on some maps, right? Like indoor maps are a nightmare for him. There's just like certain maps where he kind of struggles a little bit more than others. But if you're playing on like say like a Macmillan map, like say you're playing on, I don't know, like Ironworks of Misery or something, I would probably say Blight over Spirit. I really would. He is that good whenever you master him. Like he is that fucking good. There's very few situations where you have counterplay, and even the situations where you do have counterplay, he ends up breaking the pallet and then just coming right after you again anyway. Like he's on your ass all the time because of how mobile he is. And his mobility helps him just get around the map. It helps him pressure gens. It helps him get downs from everywhere. He does so much. He does so much and he does it so well. He's absolutely insane. So he's this high up. He's either 2 or 3. I'm going to put him at 3 as far as like overall consistency, but he's very close to the number 2 spot. He really is. He's that close. He is super, super good. Okay, so Twins is the next one up. Let's talk about Twins. So this is the other killer that I'm going to give 2 rankings to as far as chase. Kind of like Oni. Because it's kind of weird because there's like Charlotte and then there's Victor. So it's like, I mean, like which one is which? So I'm going to give 2 rankings. One for Victor, one for Charlotte. For Charlotte, I'm going to give her a 2 out of 10. Similar to Oni, she doesn't really have anything special about her. She just runs you down and tries to hit you. She's 4.6, but she doesn't really do anything special. She just runs you down and tries to hit you. However, for Victor, I'm going to give him a 10 out of 10. Fucking wild how quickly and effectively he's able to get hits. So this one's kind of a weird one. You might want to average this out again, kind of like Oni. The thing about twins are very similar to Oni in a lot of ways, where you kind of need to get the initial hit to really be able to snowball. Because this is going to take a lot of explaining. Bear with me while I rant my way through this. Victor is really strong because you're able to basically get a hit as Victor no matter what. If you're good with Victor, there's really nothing a survivor can do to reliably avoid a hit. Like windows, he can jump through. Pallets, he can jump over, right? And he's also super fast. He's like 6.0. So he just runs up right on top of you, charges his pounce, and as long as you just don't miss the pounce, you get the hit every time, right? But the thing with Victor is that if you hit somebody that's full health, he'll latch onto them, and then it'll kick you back to Charlotte, and then you have to run them down to Charlotte, which, again, we've established Charlotte's not that good in chase, right? But the thing is that the survivor is injured that you hit with Victor, then Victor will just down that survivor, and then you'll stay in control of Victor, which means you could just keep running around and find more survivors, right? So the idea behind the way the way the twins is usually played is usually you want to get survivors injured, like preferably multiple survivors injured, and then you just run around with Victor and just slug people. You just slug the shit out of people until A, you can't find anybody anymore, in which case you go get some hooks, or B, until all four are slugged and you win the game. Right? It's actually really wild how effective it is because he has really good tracking on injured survivors because blood lights up for him, kind of like Bloodhound. And also, again, his speed. He's able to get around the map so fast, and he's able to down people really, really fast. You find a survivor, you get right on top of them, no matter what they do. You either jump over the pallet, you jump through the window. As long as you don't miss your dash, they just die. They just simply die. It's crazy. So really the only downside to this is like the early start. Like she has a really rough start as far as chase goes. But the one benefit that she has over Oni is that you can use Victor to get the initial hit. It's not the most efficient way to do it, but you can use Victor, like pounce on somebody, make them injured. When they eventually take Victor off or you force Victor off of them, then they're injured, which you can find them again with Victor and down them and then kind of snowball from there. Oni can't really do that, right? Like Oni can't really get that initial hit without just doing it as his 4.6 basic bitch self. Whereas twins can do it with Victor. So interesting comparison. I just wanted to compare them since they had very similar scores in chase. I figured it'd be worth comparing. That's kind of my thoughts on how their chase goes. As far as their mobility, I'm going to give them a 2 out of 5, which is kind of weird because I know that like I just got done saying that Victor is super mobile. But really, Charlotte's the head honcho here. If you're ever going to like hook a survivor or do anything aside from like getting hits with Victor, it's with Charlotte. And it's kind of weird because like you release Victor and then he runs off and does a bunch of stuff and then it kicks you back to Charlotte. And it's almost like getting a game over in an RPG and you reload back to where you were like an hour ago, right? It's almost like that same feeling with Charlotte. Like you run around with Victor, you do all this shit, you create all this havoc, and then once you're done, it kicks you back to Charlotte. And you're like, oh my God, I'm the whole way back here. Where the hell am I? And you have to like hurry up and catch up to where you were as Victor. You know what I mean? Which is kind of like bad for mobility. It kind of makes it so you have to take a lot of the time you spend with Charlotte is like traveling to where Victor was, and it's a lot of like low mobility. Like the constant having to switch back and forth can sometimes really hurt you mobility wise. So I'm gonna give them a 2 out of 5 for mobility. As far as utility goes, I'm actually going to give them an 8 because I think they have a lot of potential, a lot of potential for utility. Victor, first off, you can park Victor anywhere you want on the map and control Charlotte. And then anybody that sprints within shrieking range of him, which I think is like 20, it's like something like 14, 16 meters or something. I don't know what the range is, but if you're close enough to hear his shrieks and you, actually it's not even running if you walk too. The only thing that'll stop it is crouch walking. As long as you're not crouch walking, and you're within shrieking range of Victor, you'll pop up on Killer Instinct. So you can use Victor to like protect totems. You can use him to like protect hooks and like give you information. You can even just use them to protect certain choke points and know if people are passing through them, like Azeroth's resting place. There's a lot of places where you can use that to your advantage for information. On top of that, just the ability to switch back and forth between two killers is insanely useful, right? Like if you like good luck ever opening an exit gate versus twins. You can literally park Victor at one and park Charlotte at another, and then just switch back and forth, right? It's also unfortunately really strong for hook camping, which I'm not really proud to say, but a lot of twins players use it to camp hooks where they'll like leave Victor at a hook and then hook them there and then walk away, or hook someone near a hook and then park Charlotte as close as they can and then run around with Victor, right? It can be really good for that. Like, it's just really good at being in multiple places at once. There's so much potential. There's almost endless potential to make plays with it. So I feel like I have to give it a high score of 8 out of 10. It has to have a pretty high score. So as far as where I'd actually rate this killer, this one's a tough one because I do think that not enough people really play twins to get a good feel for it. I feel like counterplay hasn't really been established as much as it could have been because of how little twins players there are. But from what I have seen of twins play, especially when high level people play twins, I think she belongs in the S tier. I really do. As far as how I feel about her versus Slinger, I think this is close. I think you can make an argument for twins being number 5 or Slinger being number 5, and I'm honestly really torn. The fact that twins has kind of a slow start makes me feel like I should give it to Slinger, because I feel like, again, if we're talking about the hypothetical scenario of like 4 god survivors being told that they'll get $5,000 for escaping the match, I feel like they can probably play really, really safe in the early game and maybe avoid the snowball. But really, can they? Like, it doesn't take that long to get a hit with Victor, recall him, and then get another hit. I think I want to put him above Slinger. I think I will. Like, I really do think that they are absolutely cracked, and it's really, really difficult to play against him. Victor is such a goddamn machine. He's so good. And once you get that ball rolling, it's so hard to slow it down, man. Like, you can maybe like prevent it for the most part, but you're going to be under so much pressure, man. You're going to be having to constantly pick up slugs, constantly trying to make sure that you're full health and not injured, trying to keep Victor the fuck away from you. Victor, I didn't even mention this, but Victor's also kind of stealthy. Like, it's hard to know he's coming, right? Like, if you're injured and Victor's running around somewhere, it's hard to know that he's coming. He's really tiny, so it's hard to see him, and he's not that loud. Like, sometimes you don't realize he's near you until he's like right on top of you. Then you're like, oh shit. So it's also like really difficult, even as a good survivor, to like find a safe area to heal. You know, like sometimes it's hard to even do that, which makes it even harder to counterplay. I think I'm going to put twins at number 5. I really do. But I think these are very switchable. I think putting Slinger above twins would not be crazy. And I'm very torn between the two, but I think it's one of the two. And I think I'm going to make it twins. I think twins is going to be my number 5 and Slinger is going to be my number 6. And hey, look who's last. Look who's last. All right. So let's talk about Trickster. Let's talk about him. So as far as Trickster's stats, I'll give him his stats. His chase, I'm gonna give him a 4 out of 10, which is actually kind of respectable, really. I mean, considering the fact that like Myers has a 3 out of 10, you know, Wraith and Legion have a 2 out of 10. Does anybody else have a 4? Pig has a 4, so he's on the same level as Pig as far as chase, which is really not that bad. I really do think his chase is not that bad, honestly. Like his daggers that you throw, you have to hit 8 daggers. Okay, keep in mind you might be watching this video from the future. This was made right after his release. I'm imagining he's probably going to go through some changes at some point based on the feedback that we're currently getting about him. So keep in mind that this might have been made in the past. So I'm going to explain his power, and it might be different from whatever time it is that you're watching. But as it is right now, from the time of me recording this, it takes 8 daggers to down a survivor. The daggers do have like really nice hitboxes. They have the same hitbox as like Slinger's spear, where you can get them through basically like any little like crack or hole in a wall. You can get a dagger through and get a hit, which makes it really nice on certain tiles, right? And I do think that at like low wall tiles, like the kind of tiles where I said that Huntress can get a hit no matter what. Same thing with Trickster. He can also get a hit no matter what of those tiles, right? So at tiles like that, he's actually very powerful. But the problem is, at tiles that aren't like that, like at high wall tiles, at like places like maze tiles and jungle gyms and even some like main building windows, he is quite useless. Pretty terrible. Because he's 4.4, so it's really hard to just get like a standard like melee attack. And then times where you would normally be able to get like a hatchet with Huntress, you're able to land like 1 or 2 knives, which is like, you know, a quarter of a damage state, which is not that great. So assuming the survivor that you're going against is smart and knows to run to safe areas, it's kind of hard to get damage on him. It kind of takes fucking forever. Like you either have to try to run them down as a 4.4 or you got to throw knives with them for a very, very long time. and it's just not very time efficient. Like, he will get the down eventually, right? Like, a good Trickster will be able to down almost any survivor eventually, just because the knives have good hitboxes and like you get like 60 of them. So really, he's not bad in the sense that I think like you can down anybody given enough time. But that's the thing. I think it'll take a very, very long amount of time to the point where it's not going to end up being worth it, and you're going to lose way too many gens in the process. As far as his mobility, he's going to be right there with Huntress as the only other killer that has 1 out of 5 for mobility. Because again, he's 4.4. He slows down a fuck ton while throwing while throwing daggers right now, which is another thing that I hope might change in the future. Hopefully, if you're watching this in the future, hopefully this has changed. Because right now he goes to 3.68 whenever he pulls up a dagger, and then like when he starts throwing them, he's 3.68, and then he drops down to like something like 2.4 or something. He like, if you keep throwing daggers for long enough, he eventually slows down to some like crazy slow speed. Like, it is awful, man. And then on top of that, he's kind of like Huntress, where he has to go out of his way to refill his power. He has to go to a locker, refill, which gives the survivors even more distance to run. And God, the mobility is just dreadful. It's just dreadful, man. And as far as utility, he has 0 utility. He has nothing really. I mean, I guess actually, you know what? I'll say that he has 1 utility. If I'm gonna give Spirit 1 utility for having a 24-meter tear radius, then I should give him a 1 utility too. I'll give him a 1 in the utility category, but that's it. Only because he has a smaller tear radius, so I guess he can start chases slightly closer to survivors. But that's all he gets. Other than that, it's pretty bad. So as you can see, the stats here are not looking too great. They're not looking too great. So let's tier him. So for this guy, I feel like I don't even want to put him in D tier. I feel like the only justifiable thing to do here is make a new tier, and we'll make it green to fit the color, and we'll call this tier the Y tier. Is what we'll call this, because why would you ever play this guy? Why? The thing about Trickster is, to me, it feels like he is just basically like a worse version of Huntress. Like, it feels like situations where you're able to hit daggers, you're usually able to possibly hit a Huntress hatchet, which would just do damage as opposed to doing a percentage of damage. You know what I mean? And I didn't even really touch base on the fact that, like, if a survivor can survive long enough and not get hit for long enough, that like the progress towards a hit literally starts to go down. It starts to regress, and you lose progress towards a hit. Like, there's so much bad to say about this guy that like it's rough, man. It's rough. He's in such a bad spot right now, and hopefully he gets changed. But as he is right now, man, he is easily the worst in the game, I think, and I really just don't know why you would play him. Like, I just don't think he has a spot in the game at the moment, and I feel like you'd be crazy to play anyone other than, like, if you were gonna play him, you're just better off playing Huntress, like, every single time, I think. So I think this is where he belongs. All right, so just to take one last quick look at this and see if I want to make any adjustments. I feel like it's looking pretty good, although I feel like C tier is looking pretty empty. I don't know if I'm doing this just to fill C tier or if this is actually how I'm feeling, but I kind of feel like I want to move both Clown and Wraith to C tier and maybe leave it like this. This feels, and also Myers I think can go ahead of Legion, because Myers, you know, he does have one-shot downs, and, you know, he does have some potential to snowball, even though it's not good, and like no good player should ever get hit by it. It is still kind of technically there, so I guess I'll give him the high end of D tier. This looks pretty solid though. I mean, really though, like the way I'm judging these tiers is basically like, if you're a group of good survivors, how do you feel going against these killers? S tier is like, ah, shit, dude. Like, this is a fucking scary killer that's gonna be fucking us up. Like, we gotta be on high alert at all times. Like, they are gonna be killing us. Like at this point, we know we're gonna be dying, and we need to just like tactically choose where to die to make sure that we're dying in efficient places. You know what I mean? That's like S tier, right? A tier is like, all right, these guys are really strong, but you know, we can play around them as long as we don't mess up. We can literally just win like the normal old-fashioned way. But if we do mess up, even at all, we're probably going to be in for a really rough time. Like, it's going to be very difficult to come back from. We kind of can't make very many big mistakes at all, or else we're going to get kind of El Dicoed. Then B tier is like, all right, these guys are like reasonably strong, but we should be okay. As long as we keep things under control, we should really have no issue. Like, we should be able to beat these guys pretty much no problem. C tier is like, all right, these guys are not very great. We should be totally fine. And then D tier is like, hey, free win, baby. Hell yeah, dude. Give me that free win. And then the Y tier is like, holy shit, this guy decided to play Trickster? What the fuck is he thinking? Why did this guy not queue up his Huntress? The hell? What the hell is this guy? Is this guy on drugs? What's going on here? What the hell is happening? So that's kind of how I determine these tiers, and I feel like they all fit into their respective tier pretty well. Again, I want to remind you guys for one final time that this tier list is based off of very, very, very high skilled survivors and not based off your average games at rank 1. So if you're like a newer player who is coming to this tier list to try to see what a finalized tier list looks like, to try to get a feel for what killer is the best for when you're queuing up a rank 1 and playing against a bunch of random rank 1s who don't know what they're doing, this is not really an accurate tier list for that. If you guys want, I would be okay with making another tier list that is more along the lines of like, what killer is the easiest to perform well while queuing at rank 1 or something, right? Like, it's not really like a truly who's the best killer. It's more of like a who's the easiest killer to do well with against, you know, the random survivors that you go against. I could do that separate tier list if you want, but if you want an actual power tier list of what killer has the most potential to like be the strongest, this is it. This is the one. I'm sorry. I'm sticking to my guns here. I'm 100% confident in all of it, everything except for Plague. Again, I'm a little bit non-confident about Plague, but I'm pretty confident about the whole thing in general. And yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts. I'm sure you guys have a lot to say about this, so feel free to like rip into me and let me have it in the comments. Leave the video a like if you guys enjoyed it. Hey, even if you disagree, leave it a like, because why not, man? You know, we can at least have a discussion, you know, or give it a dislike. I don't know, who cares? Interact with the video, you know, interact with the video. It helps me out. Thank you guys so much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And leave me comments if you guys want me to do that follow-up tier list. Please let me know. Feel free to sub. I'm uploading not as much as I used to, but I'm gonna be trying to upload probably like almost daily, if not every other day, again soon. And I also live stream on Twitch 6 nights a week over at twitch.tv/OhTofu. That's more on my main platform, so feel free to stop by over there and follow if you guys want to. And that's it for me, guys. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your night. Hope you enjoyed the tier list, and I'm out of here. See ya, guys. Take care. See ya. I'm out of here. See ya. See you later. See ya.